Batten here.
Committee Hickey?
Here.
Mr. Travellini?
Here.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Here.
Mr. Leonard?
Here.
Mr. DeGiannini?
Here.
Ms. Orabon is absent. Mr. Walter?
Here.
Mr. First?
Here.
Chairwoman Betcha.
Here.
Adequate notice of this meeting of the Bedminster Township Land Use Board was filed with the Township Clerk, sent to the Bernardsville News and the Courier News, and to all subscribers, and posted on the Township Municipal Building, 1 Miller Lane, Bedminster, New Jersey, on June 10th, 2021.
Please stand for the flag salute. We have a special flag salute today. It's Veterans Day. So I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So good to have everybody in the public tonight. It's great to have us all back again. So welcome to everybody. I'll open it up to the public if there's anything anybody has to say that's not on the agenda tonight. And I believe we have an attorney on Zoom. She wants to identify herself. Is that true, Janine?
Yes, Sherry? If you can unmute yourself.
Unmute yourself.
Good evening, everyone. Sherry Orenberg-Ruggieri from the law firm of Francis P. Linus. I'm just present for the extension request.
Oh, okay, good.
So
Welcome.
if there's any questions, I'm available.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have, I'll close it to the public then if there's no one else. We have minutes from November 4th that need to be approved from last week. If I have a motion,
Motion. Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Abstain.
So we have 3 abstentions. Everyone else is in favor. Minutes are approved from last week. We have some correspondence from Frank Littis. He's looking for an extension on their Crossroads Business Center resolution that was done a few years ago. And I believe, Frank, Tom, is there
Yeah, I have
anything?
no problem with it. It's appropriate, given the economic conditions. So if the board is willing to, you have before you a draft resolution extending it for a year, nearly identical to last year's extension.
I remember that was the parking lot, wasn't that, at the
Right.
office building over there?
The office
Okay.
building off of Burn Mills Road and behind the...
Anyone that wasn't on the board, can they vote as
They
well?
can still vote.
They can still vote.
Basically, we're not doing anything other than granting a one-year extension of the statutory protection period. All that really means is that if there were any new ordinances, they wouldn't apply to this. Generally speaking, there aren't really any new ordinances, but even if there were, it's appropriate to extend it because it just means that they could start construction.
It's just an extension?
Yeah.
Okay. So Janine, we need a roll call, please?
I don't need a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, we didn't have a motion yet, so I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to extend.
And a second?
I'll second.
You can. I don't think, well, it's Board of
that?
Adjustment.
It's Board of
Oh,
Adjustment.
it's Board of Adjustment, sorry. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Now we can do a roll call.
We can.
Yeah, we're out.
Mr. Travellini?
Aye.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mr. Leonard?
Aye.
Mr. DeGiannini?
Aye.
Mr. Orabon is absent. Mr. Walter?
Aye.
Mr. First?
Aye.
Chairwoman Betcha.
Aye. Motion is approved for the extension. Our old business, we have the plan endorsement self-assessment that is scheduled for next week.
For next
I'm
week.
sorry, in December 9th. Okay. And,
By the way, that'll be a noticed public hearing and public meeting and an outreach effort to the public with some advertising. And we went over it last week,
We
but
did.
basically Frank is preparing a municipal self-assessment report for you to consider adopting and giving to the committee, for the committee to consider endorsing and asking the State Planning Commission to endorse Bedminster again. You're one of the few municipalities in New Jersey that's fully endorsed by the State Planning Commission. And it's all good. It takes time and it's bureaucracy, but it's all good for us. So.
okay, so we'll do that in December. Okay, so I think we're ready for our new hearing, Bed 1, 21-007.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Lawrence Escatello. I'm an attorney with O'Toole Scrivo in Cedar Grove, New Jersey. I'm appearing on behalf of applicant SK Bed 1 Associates LLC. Tonight, the applicant seeks preliminary and final site plan approval and preliminary and major final subdivision approval for the property at 1052 Burnt Mills Road, Block 71, Lot 7. The applicant seeks to subdivide Lot 7 into 2 lots. Lot 7 will continue to contain the existing office building and parking. Lot 7.01 will contain a new mixed-use residential and retail development, including a 3-story multifamily residential building with 160 units, including 24 affordable units. The applicant also proposes a host of amenities as well as stormwater management features. The development is designed to meet the township's affordable housing obligation while enhancing the southern terminus of Pluckham Village. Tonight you'll hear from several witnesses, including Noah Krismer of KRE, the applicant's Director of Planning and Entitlements, Ron Kennedy, Professional Engineer and Planner, David Minnow, Architect, Tom Bauer, Landscape Architect. So without further ado, I'd like to call and have our first witness sworn.
Sure. Please come forward, Mr. Krishmer. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
And please state your name and address and give us at least a business address. And spell your last name.
Cool, no problem. This works great. So Noah Krismer, 414 South Perth Street in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 19147. And our business address here is 520 US 22 East in Bridgewater, 08807. And last name is Krismer, CHRISMER.
Thank you, gentlemen. Please go ahead.
Thanks.
Good evening, Mr. Krismer.
Good evening.
Could you give the board the benefit of your role at KRE and then as well as an overview of the textual features of the site that the applicant developed?
Sure. Thanks, Larry. I think most of the members of the board, except for Mr. First, are relatively familiar with me now over the course of the last couple years. I'm Noah Krismer. I'm our Director of Planning and Entitlements. I'm not sure I'm a witness that needs professional qualifications because hopefully you're not going to rely on me for any detail in this plan. But I do have a planning degree from the University of Pennsylvania and a business degree from Wharton there, and have been serving in this role for about 6 years now with KRE Group. So with that said, I don't know if I need to be qualified or anything. Okay.
Not looking to qualify.
Thanks. That was an odd little introduction there. It was not on my script, but that's good. So first of all, I want to thank everybody, and it's nice to see everybody in person again. So this is good. I think that this project started. I'd like to just do a quick history and then lead in. This project started a couple years ago now, really, with this township and this board taking, I think this was even under Mayor Parker, taking some initiative township-wide to look at areas in this township where projects might be done that could enhance the commercial viability of some of the office areas here, but also help to fulfill some of the affordable housing obligations that the township was looking for. And we joined in that process with you, and I think in a pretty collaborative process over a couple years' time, culminating this summer in a rezoning, struck a project that everybody could be proud of and that delivered on those aims. I think that tonight is going to be a little bit of deja vu, hopefully, as that zoning process was very detailed through the board's diligence on everything from site plan to materials to landscaping. And tonight, what we really hope to do is to fulfill the promises that we made through those rezoning processes, through those multiple hearings that we had, and bring the board and our vision to fruition. So we're going to have a number of folks tonight. Everybody knows Ron Kennedy. We also have Tom Bauer, partner at Melillo & Bauer, who further enhanced the landscape plan here. We have Dave Minnow, who took the architecture and really brought it into reality. And we hope to have Mark Kushner, but he got sick, and so I'm going to do Mark's introduction. I will try to do my best Mark Kushner impression. I had already left the house, so I don't have the black sweater and the black pants and the black shoes, but I will do my best to do that. And lastly, I think that it is our hope that you guys will find this consistent with the vision that you helped to establish and that you codified in the summertime here. So with that, I will try to click through my slides here. Does this work? I have to aim it at that. Okay, Chris, do you mind if I ask you just to press forward as we go? Is that all right? We had a fancy little thing here. Yeah. Ah, there we go. Okay, so we're going to start with a site context plan here. And again, these slides will look familiar, but for the benefit of the board and also the public, wanted to run back through these again. Clearly, what we found compelling and what we tried to focus on were the multiple connections on this site, and connections to Pluckerman Village to the north, connections to Bed 1 and the other office building with Verizon, and the greater commercial context to the south here, connections to the park system, including Puckerman Park and Burnt Mills Park, and to really use this site as a way where it's underutilized now, but could become a focal point and really a node of these different neighborhoods and a point of activity and an amenity for the commercial product, as well as something lovely that the community could use for an amenity as well. As you heard from Larry, the plan contemplates a subdivision of the site, largely running along through the pond there, with the northern part of the site that is in the white little outline being a new mixed-use project, and the southern part of the site continuing to be the office building and some expanded parking, again, if and when is needed, as we talked about with the board during the rezoning process. Highlighting some of the vehicular connections, I think that we will not have this evening Gary Dean for traffic. He will have to come to the next hearing. He's been unavailable, and we knew about that, but didn't want to delay the hearing. And Gary certainly is the best person to talk to traffic on this, and we want to have his expertise here. But to highlight a couple things, just briefly as introduction, as this board knows, we were asked and went forward with this to begin the process of looking at the Burnt Mills and 202 intersection in real detail, and to put forward some ideas on how we could alleviate some of the traffic at that intersection in advance of the zoning process, because we knew and understood from the mayor and folks on the board how important that was to this project and to this community. So we'll hear more about that from Gary in his direct testimony at the next hearing. But also, I think also important to the board, and this I can talk about, was that there be a sort of open and public access connection using the ring road here, which we're committed to doing and which you'll see on the plans as we go through it. So pedestrian connections, vehicular connections. One of the most critical things I think that Mark has highlighted here, and that drove this, was that, and you'll see this as the plans play out, and the board, I think, saw this through the rezoning process, is that particularly on the mixed use part of the project, we really tried to integrate best we could vehicular traffic with pedestrian traffic, and to make this a place where, while cars were going to be here and while they're needed for the viability of the retail, it's going to be a pedestrian-driven community. And it's going to be pedestrian-driven from folks walking down from Pluckerman, from folks walking to and from the park system, and from employees who are officing at Bed 1 and other buildings there. So we'll see that in a little bit more detail. Thanks, Chris. Returning again to some slides that, as this board knows, we used. Bedminster obviously, goes without saying, has one of the richest colonial architectural histories in the country. And so we took a lot of time studying that and used that for inspiration in the project that you're going to see today. We have a number of historical precedents here. Thanks, Chris. That also reference Pluckerman Village. This is our neighbor to the north, and an important neighbor, and we would like and hope that this, the new mixed-use addition to this project, becomes a sort of southern anchor for Pluckerman Village and can integrate itself into the village in that way. Thanks, Chris. And this is the project goal, right? We have a very contemporary office building, which is nice in its own right, and then we have Pluckerman Village and a rich colonial history, and how do we blend those two in a way that's respectful to the architecture and doesn't feel like you're trying to copy it or make some sort of Disney World out of it, but certainly pays tribute to it and incorporates it into the architecture. Thanks, Chris. So this was a big, I alluded to this, but unifying the public realm and the pedestrian experience with the car experience was a big focus of ours. You see here a number of precedents that we used through the zoning process as we began to brainstorm this that showed ways in which you can really have a space that, while it allows cars, marks itself as a pedestrian space. And you'll see that with Tom Bauer's presentation on the landscape architecture today and the way that he was able to manage the Wooner to landscape it, to differentiate the paving. We think it has been really effective, and so we're hoping that it can be like some of the projects that we all looked at, you know, coming up on a year now. Thanks, Chris. Also activating the public realm, right? So there's going to be a public realm here, but it's not a strip mall of stores sitting out on Burnt Mills. This is really meant to be a public plaza space, a space that can be used, that can be closed off temporarily for markets or fairs or anything like that, but that can be used day to day as well to be a real public realm, a meeting place for people, a place where you might go to have a sandwich or a coffee and sit around in the plaza and enjoy the area. So another highlight of ours. And then lastly, we just wanted to touch on the overall site plan of the mixed-use project here. And we're zooming in here, and this is giving you a little bit more color here and a little bit more detail. I think the board will recognize the buildings. I think that we've tightened them up a little bit now. You'll see a lot more detail than what the board saw during the rezoning process. You're going to see a lot of detail on the retail pavilion, the pedestrian connections. And here's the overall site plan that you're looking at for the mixed-use portion. Ron, of course, will zoom back and talk about the overall site plan for both of the now subdivided parcels in his testimony. But anyway, I thought that I wanted to just address the board, sort of bring myself and everybody back up on the history of this. Thank you again for the time during the rezoning process and for the time that you're going to take through the hearings here in hopes of an ultimate approval. But we're really here to make sure that we fulfilled our promises, and if we didn't, to figure out how we can. So I'll pass it off now. Larry, thanks. And any questions, I guess I'll stay.
We can open it up to the board. If the board has any questions for Noah? No? And we can open it up to the public. Do you see anybody on Zoom? Okay, we'll close it.
No one's even there.
No, there are some people, but most, I think, are with the application, but there are, I think, one or two that are not. At least I'm not familiar with their names, so you can either raise your hand or you can just unmute yourself and let us know that you have a question. You can also do the little raise hand button at the bottom. I don't believe that there is anyone.
Okay.
We'll just
so-
confirm for the record that that set of PowerPoint slides will be A1, and it seems to have the cover page and 8 pages. We don't need to separately mark them. And maybe you could make sure you give a copy of the PowerPoint to Janine as a digital document.
Sure thing, Tom.
Certainly, I agree. I'd like to, like you said, mark the May 1 and call it site plan context exhibits.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we'll close it to the public and
Thanks,
start
Madam
your
Chair.
next witness.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this time, I'd like to call Ronald A. Kennedy, professional engineer, special planner.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy, and please state your name and address.
Certainly. Ronald A. Kennedy, Kennedy, 265 Main Street in Gladstone.
Just confirm for the record that the board recognizes and accepts Ronald Kennedy's qualifications as a professional engineer and professional planner. Please go ahead, gentlemen.
Thank you. Is both mics working? Because we should probably get the other mic over to Larry.
You can.
Okay.
I do think that one actually works better. I know that when you're in the town council meetings, so it's, yeah, that probably makes more
No.
sense, Ron, that you're on the other mic.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just one minute. Steve, is you all right, Steve, down there? Can you see that? Okay, so you're all right?
Can we turn the TV a little bit?
Well, I know they want to have it for the audience
You
as
can,
well.
you can,
A little bit.
Just
You
a
can
little bit.
Tilt, just a little.
Tilt the screen?
Yeah, just a tad,
Towards
yeah.
us.
Can we? Okay.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's fine.
Wonderful.
That's good.
Is that better? Thanks.
Yeah, much better.
Madam Chair, would you
Okay.
like me to ask Mr. Kennedy about his qualifications? Mr. Collins seems to recommend you accept it.
Yes, absolutely.
No, we don't need to go through his qualifications.
Okay, we're
I don't
good.
think.
I can spend 2 hours.
We know the real one, so.
We know the drill. No, that's okay.
mentioned you were special. I don't know how special. Larry called special?
Okay, so I'll go through, again, it's the same PowerPoint presentation, Tom, but I don't know if we'll start over with the slides. I think there's a total of 8 slides that we have in this presentation. Just as way of background, it's Block 71, Lot 7. The exhibit, it's not going to show up on the screen here, but the exhibit that, my first panel is just the neighborhood, the area, similar to the exhibit that Noah had, and it outlines the property itself and the neighborhood. Everyone's familiar with the neighborhood at the intersection of Pluckerman Village, Washington Valley Road, Burnt Mills Road, and Route 202, 206. And on the bottom part of the sheet is the Route 78 itself, and then the interchange with 78 to 287. When we go into the next slide, it'll go into a little detail. I'm going to spend a couple minutes talking about the existing conditions on the property. So it's the same aerial image, it just zooms in. The property itself, just for reference, is 22.475 acres. So 22.475 acres. It is now the ORV mixed-use district that is now on the property. The infrastructure that was built there was the 1982 City Federal corporate headquarters. It was built, the City Federal Bank built the corporate headquarters in '82 on this property. And the predominant thing they did there was they had the bank itself. You can see the parking lot, that is the lower part of the sheet towards Route 78 and the 287 interchange. But there was a stream running right through the middle of this. And we have the aerial images on historicaerials.com, and it was an existing stream before the development, and they went and built an on-stream detention basin. And at the time, really, DEP wasn't up and running yet with stormwater rules, but they built something with Bedminster Township, and they built this detention basin on stream, and there's an outlet structure, and that'll come into play when we get into a lot of the site detail. But then on the other side of that, towards Burnt Mills Road, you see the 2 other bays of parking that were on the other side, and they put quite attractive bridges that were over the stream and made pedestrian connections from one side of the stream to the other. The area closer to Burnt Mills Road over its time had a temporary retail building that was a City Federal Bank that was removed, and over time another bank was built at the corner of Burnt Mills Road and the Ring Road on this upper left corner of the sheet, and that still exists today. It's I think it's PNC Bank that's there now. The property itself, as you see it right now, hasn't changed in quite a number of years. It's the same development, the same parking area, other than the bank location, everything else is the same since the 1980s. When we go and look at the existing conditions on the site from an environmental condition side, the next exhibit is going to be a typical environmental conditions map. And there's some pretty key elements here. Because there is a stream that runs through the middle of the property, it will be regulated by DEP. The drainage area is about 172 acres, just to give you some parameters. It's not the Chambers Brook. That's on the other side of Route 78 to the south at the Bridgewater, Bedminster border. That's the actual Chambers Brook. That's much bigger. That's thousands of acres of drainage acres that go into Bridgewater. This is a relatively small drainage area, but it runs on the other side of the car wash, runs under, past the development that Hovnanian built, the drainage of the Green Village detention basin at the corner right beyond the A&P lot. That drains into here, and it works its way up through some of the drainages to the top of Knollcrest. So just to give you some parameters, what's coming here is, if I dropped a bucket of water of some of the units on Knollcrest, it would end up going through this. On the other side of Knollcrest, it would go the completely other way and go down towards the EDC treatment plant and the basin down on Schley Mountain Road. So it has a drainage area that's, again, 172 acres. It's big, but not a huge drainage area. But it does have a stream corridor as defined by DEP. It has some wetlands, although minimum wetlands that are right along the stream corridor itself. They've been identified, applications have been put into DEP, I'd say about 3 to 4 months ago, for a wetlands determination, a flood hazard determination, and a riparian buffer determination. We've talked to them already. It's going to be ordinary resource value of 50-foot riparian buffer and a 50-foot wetlands buffer that's shown on this plan. So all the development's going to be contained outside of that area for the DEP regulated areas. Also, your typical stream corridor easement that's required in your ordinance for 50 foot on either side of the stream will comply with that. There'll be no issues. There'll be one element that we're going to spend some time talking about, though, that will need relief on. And I'll go into a little more detail, but I just want to show this one exhibit. It's the outer pink lines that are here. And that is something that you have a stream buffer, different than your stream corridor easement that we see 50 foot most all applications. But you have something there. We're going to spend a little more time talking about the details of it. But because this is considered a blue line stream in the USGS maps, it has another characteristic that you have another standard that's in there that we're going to have to spend a couple of minutes talking about. But I just want to give reference to this exhibit of that's where the lines are. And you can see how they are in relationship, especially on the north side where the development's proposed. Those lines are in the parking lot. So it's already disturbed. It's not like we're cutting trees down to go do that. It's in the parking lot. But you have an interesting definition that we'll spend some time about these stream buffers that you call them in your ordinance. In the same section as your stream corridor ordinance, but there's another subsection of that. So when we get to the overall site, and Noah just described the improvements, we want to break it down into basically two components. The north side, what will be lot 7.01, which is the residential or multi-mixed-use portion of the property towards Burnt Mills Road. And that'll be approximately 7.8 acres. And then the lower portion around the office building would be subdivided off, and that would be separately, that would be 14.5 acres. So 14.5 acres on the southern portion, which is the office side, and then the 7.8 acres that would be on the northern side. And you can see a yellow line right on the north side of the pond. Again, my pointer's not going to point to it. You'll see a yellow line there. That's the subdivision line between the two. So it's generally on the north side of the detention basin or the on-stream pond that will be the division between the two uses that are there. We subdivided two separate lots, will conform to all the standards associated with the lots established for the zone. So, as Noah suggested, that the project's designed to meet the township's affordable housing obligation and then enhancing the southern terminus of the Pluckman Village. It's mixed use with highly amenitized space, and we're going to talk about that amenitized space with the different professionals here. Consistent with the concept plan that was generated during the rezoning process, The multifamily building is a 3-story mixed-use building. It has multifamily residential, and it has, the full building has structured parking below, and then it has retail to the front towards the Burnt Mills roadside, and you're going to hear some details on that. You're going to also hear about the retail building or pavilion that's close to Burnt Mills Road itself that we talked about in the original approval. It's about a 2,000 square foot building. It sits about 5 foot off the right-of-way line. And we're going to spend a lot of time, and Tom Bauer is going to talk about that retail space and the parking space along there of what is this worn-off or a living street and the details of that living street. So I'm going to talk it in general terms, but he's going to get a lot more detail about how it works, behaves, the detailed design elements of that. The PNC Bank itself will be removed and relocated. Can you hear? It's not PNC. What is it now? Chase?
Bank of
Sorry.
America.
Bank of America? Hey, tomorrow will be something else. It's a bank. Okay. So, excuse me, the Bank of America, I guess if the brand people for B&A were here, they'd be upset about that. But the Bank of America bank itself will be physically removed in its current location, and then it's going to be incorporated into the design that's on the western side of the retail side of that. You'll see the details of the architecture associated with that. Noah talked about, and I'll get into a little more detail, about the connections to the public, to the park system, and certainly just to the west is the Pluckham Schoolhouse Park. So we're showing connections that'll actually go into that area, into the parking area itself, and then connections that will ultimately get to the hike and bike trail. Public access along the ring road, as discussed in the ordinance itself, the ring road will have public access. It'll still be private and owned by KRE, but it will have public access to it. The road will be improved. I think it was a question Mr. Ferraro had, that'll be overlaid. Curb's in good shape, but the pavement's not. So when the construction is near complete, the project will be overlaid. We'll keep the connections to the existing office, between the office and the multifamily space itself. And when we go into the multifamily on the next slide, I'm going to zoom in a little farther and give you some of the details of that. As I said, the lot was 7.8 acres. The building itself is 160 units, consistent with the ordinance. It's broken down to 43 one-bedrooms, 112 two-bedrooms, and 5 three-bedrooms. 24 of the units would be affordable of that count. This total square footage of the residential portion of that was 205,000 square foot, and there'll be a whole level of parking that's below the residential first level. In the front of the building that faces Burnt Mills Road, there'll be approximately 17,000 square foot of retail that would be there, the bank, and 2 sets of retail spaces on either side of that center core that you see indented in Burnt Mills Road. There'll be retail, and again, Dave Minnow will talk details about how that works. And then in the front, that standalone building, that's a tan shade, that's that front pod, that's retail as well. That's about 2,000 square foot. That's right along Burnt Mills Road. We're going to reuse the existing access points toward Burnt Mills Road. So the access point that is the ring road itself on the left side of the sheet will be reused. The existing access that goes to, and make sure I get the bank right, the Chase Bank at the corner, the Chase, okay, the intersection of Burnt Mills and 202, 206, that still remains the same, but it would be now multifunctional, both access to that bank as well as an ingress and egress to this project as well. And a question was raised in Mr. Ferraro's letter that will provide agreements that we have rights to redo that access and still maintain the rights that the bank has to get into their property. You see on this plan, in the center section of the plan, where the skinny part of the building in the center connects, to the rear of that is a green roof amenity deck. It's a first level amenity deck, and that's going to have the standards of pools, fire pits, grills, dining area, all those outside amenity spaces that would be associated with a building like this that KRE would do, and Mr. Bauer is going to spend some time talking about all those details. There's also a separate courtyard that's on the right side of the sheet. You can see the courtyard towards the I guess it would be the back of the bank. That is a passive green roof area, and that's going to be community gardens that would be there, fire pits and quiet lounge areas would be on that side. So an active recreation area and then a quiet recreation area would be on the property, around the buildings. Parking would be provided in a couple of different areas. First of all, along the front itself on Burnt Mills Road, there'll be 67 parking spaces associated with that. There is, below the building, 212 parking spaces. There's 2 other parking lots that would be on to the left side of the sheet, representing another 55 and 31 parking spaces respectively, that would be used by the residents that would be there, and also some overflow from the retail to meet your ordinance that would be from the front, so employees would park back there. So we'd keep more parking spaces in the front for guests that would be in the front there. We provide the ADA parking. There's something new that we're dealing with that we're going to come back to this board about how many electric charging stations are required. And I don't know if you've had an application yet for this, but there's a new law that was just passed that X percentage of residential projects now have to have wired and put in electric charging stations. And it could be as high as 15% of the number of parking spaces. So that's significant in a project like this. So we're just trying to understand that a little better. We'll come back, and I know Dave Minnow has some experience with this. He can talk a little about it itself, but we're not sure exactly how it's going to play out, but we're going to have to put X number. And there's a burn-in period. I think it's a third, a third, a third. You have to have a third by CO, a third after X number of years, and a third after Y number of years. So you're going to see that in any one of your residential projects. You actually have to build electric car charging stations.
They get used up awfully fast. 6 or 8 months ago, there was always room in our office building for, now you have to wait to get a spot.
Well, this is just a residential requirement though, right?
No, it's for non-residential as well.
Is it, Paul? I thought it was
Yeah.
residential.
No,
Oh,
it's
non-residential.
non-residential.
And the wacky thing, the way it was written, it wasn't coordinated at all with RSIS. So there's no reconciliation with that yet. Because one of the requirements, if you put them in, a certain percentage of your spaces now can be reduced as well. So if a project like this requires 2 spaces per unit, now you can go down a certain percentage to only 1 space per unit. It gets a little... What's that? Yeah, it just gets interesting. So just the concept today, we'll talk about that. We're going to be coming back. We're not changing our parking and reducing the parking number. We're keeping that where it is. We will provide what's required. We're just trying to figure out what that is, just so we can make a representation to you of what that requirement is.
It's another state statute where the state statute just declares this is the municipal requirement to apply in all developments. So it's basically a state statute preempting and requiring it of all developments.
And Tom, don't you have to pass an ordinance too, each town? Or is the
No,
model?
You may pass an
The
ordinance.
DCA regulations are in effect, and that is what the standard is.
So it's not a municipal that have to pass their own
No,
ordinance?
you can pass an ordinance, an enhanced ordinance that requires more,
Okay.
something along those lines, but no, you don't have to pass an ordinance.
Again,
So-
we're going to learn about it
so-
together,
so-
but we're going to have to do
So
something.
just to carry that through, Ron, because it's a state statute and it's a state, basically the state saying this is the standard to apply to all developments. The state statute technically is higher in authority than the RSIS regulations, which are statutory authorized regulations of DCA that are mandatory for all residential development. I think it would be fairly clear that this state statute basically preempts even the DCA regulation. It overrides them and says everybody has to do these minimum electric charging station requirements and can do it in accordance with these provisions. And then the municipality is authorized to perhaps adopt an ordinance, but if they do, the degree of deviation from the state statute is near zero. John Bellardo wrote an email about it, and it's probably, in my view with John, that it's probably not even worth it to do an ordinance, but if you wanted to, you could maybe say that the sign has to be blue instead of yellow or something like that, some stupid things that are just drive you crazy. I wouldn't bother. So just
Would our traffic-
whatever you can do, just do it, and we'll just have to.
Yeah, again, the simple answer, we have to conform, we know that, we're just not sure exactly which spaces, and
Right.
we may not know till construction, just because it's
Would our
probably going to get
traffic
some...
engineers know?
What's that?
Our traffic engineers?
Can they talk about it?
No, I mean, would they know the answer to
I don't
that?
know. We can ask
They don't
ours,
know?
and I know Chuck's on the call too, so we
Yeah.
can figure that out. Again, we're not going to figure that and solve that tonight.
I understand, right.
I just want to give the board the heads up that that's a new
Yeah.
requirement that we're dealing with. Some other just basic things. There's loading, and there's two areas, certainly on 160 units of a apartment-style living, it's going to be important how a site's loaded and unloaded for furniture moving in and out. So there's two areas that are designed. One on the upper right side of the building, there is a loading area there that the dimensions, Paul had asked that, we'll make that 15 by 30, so it'll comply with the loading ordinance. That is on the right side of the sheet. And then all the way on the lower part of the sheet in the rear, you'll see a shaded area where Chris has his little hand there. That area itself, that's another loading area. A little smaller, we can make it 15 foot wide, but because of the layout, it's only 24 foot deep, and there's a 6 foot sidewalk behind it. So the KRE says that's fine for them in any of their other projects. Your ordinance only requires one loading dock, we're showing two. It, say somewhat complies, it's 24 plus a 6 foot sidewalk behind it.
And my concern was there's no loading shown for any of the non-residential. The retail spaces have no loading areas.
Yeah, and we'll talk through that. I think, I'll say that we that's through the front door. You know, those retail areas are there.
I
think.
understand that, but where do the vehicles park?
Yeah, and it's going to be along the sides, and there's areas there. I think Tom and Dave can talk a little more about where they're showing that. But there's no proposed loading for those areas.
So just those two blackened parking spaces, the one oversized one on the lower left and the small one on the upper right?
Yes, that's the load-in for, the residential side of things. And again, the retail will be through the front door for the size space that retail is. The drive-through for the bank, there's a small two-lane drive-through to the rear of the bank, which is on the front left corner of the building. And you'll see that drive-through there, consistent with what we talked about. Waste management, it's going to be inside the building. Dave Minna will spend some time talking about how that works, but that'll all be through the inside of the building, collected in there, and then brought out to the hauler. And he'll go through some more details on that. As far as pedestrian access, there'll be linkages across the front of the building for the retail, and you'll see a lot of detail about the pedestrian linkages. It'll tie into the left side of this plan, tie into the park on the left, tie into the sidewalk at the intersection of Burnt Mills Road and Route 202-206. It'll connect around the multifamily building. You'll see walkways all around connecting into the existing walkways that are on the property today. You'll also see the connection from this building across to the office building over the bridge that goes over the stream. There'll be another connection along the ring road itself that'll be a pedestrian connection. So we're adding a substantial amount of pedestrian connections around the building and connecting it to the uses that are surrounding the property.
Ron, real quick, the drive-through through the bank, can you show that again? Is that the?
Sure.
And then it empties out into the parking lot, they go through the parking lot?
And I'm going to come up to the screen, because it's going to be easier than trying to point to. But it's one way, so it'll come through here, so you come through the parking lot, you come into this area here, drive through it, and go like that. Okay, so the circulation will be through the lot that comes through here. All right, when we go to the office building, the area around the building itself is not changing, not proposed to change, but we have that displaced parking. So the total number of parking spaces on the property today for the office use is 614. There's approximately 217 of those spaces that are being reworked on the south side of the property, and you'll see the parking lots around these yellow areas. And we label them A through D on the plans because they would be phased in as far as the need to build that additional parking, as we talked about during the zoning process for there. There's no need to build that parking unless there is a need, and obviously we're designing the whole component of it now. All the stormwater will be designed for it, all the improvements will be designed for it, but we want the ability for the owner to phase those in as need arises. There's no sense in building parking when they don't feel that there's a need, or I'm sure the resolution would be written that if the town feels that there's a need, they can say to the owner that they need to put the parking in.
Ron, do we have that plan?
Yes.
Yeah, so we have the full detail plan. It doesn't have the phase lines on there.
It's in big sheets?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not sure what number, Rich, but yeah, it's
All
on
right,
there.
but the lettering sequences, what's done initially?
I'll check on that. It's all the new parking. We'll see how it's actually written, A,
But
B,
that's on
C,
these
D.
big suckers.
Big suckers, yes. The full-size plans. So again, it's pretty simple what we're reworking the parking. On the left side, you'll see that there is a little easier to get into the loading dock on the office building. Right now, you got to make 3 or 4 turns to go in there. It's a little awkward. So we reworked that space at the request of the operator that KRE has on the property to just make it easier to get in and out of that loading area. And you'll also see on original plans, on the upper part of the sheet, that parking lot that extends over by the car wash, that's on an angle. We originally had it perpendicular, and the reason for that is when we studied the floodplain, first of all, the whole car wash is in the floodplain, but the actual floodplain comes along that angle line at the top there, and that's why we couldn't fill in that area where we originally had. So we had to redesign that from the original plans that were submitted. So that's just a slight change that's there, and we had to move some of the stormwater management features around when we did the study of the floodplain.
Can I stop you? Since we're on that plan. When we build out phase 1, phase 2 expansion, and phase 3 parking, even at phase 3, we're within our lot coverage limitations?
Yes, okay. And I'll look at the numbers. Rich at that.
Seems like there's not very much green left.
So the ordinance is written at 60% coverage. This is at 56.3 with full build-out. Okay, so, I mean, we're close to it. We're at 56, where 60 is allowable.
And the intent, if I remember our conversations, was as needed.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Again, if the tenant mix has no need for it, why go build that part?
Okay.
But as we're talking about now, we're getting it all approved and designed today. So we wouldn't have to come back to this board. It would be something that would be all set up already.
Okay.
The next item is just on stormwater and utilities. And just on the property itself, if I folded a paper in a V, a piece of paper in a V, the center of that V is the low point, which is the stream in the center. So it rises to Burnt Mills Road, and it rises down to the intersection of 202, 206, and Route 78. You know, so just everything flows down to the pond, okay, generally, just from a grading standpoint, it all flows that way. So when we started looking at stormwater, and we started looking at what's there today and how to relate this to the new stormwater rules, what we had a number of pretty significant meetings with DEP on how to use that pond over and look at that as a stormwater control aspect. And there is some aspects in the code that we can't use it for additional storage, but because the outlet structure provides control, we can do a pretty sophisticated analysis to show that we don't have downstream impacts or upstream impacts to it. So we had to actually study the stream corridor on the site. We had to go 500 foot downstream, 500 foot upstream. We had to go all to the top of the watershed, determine how much water's coming off of there, and establish floodplain lines that were very detailed, because there's no state study for this. We had to establish our own detailed study. So we spent time doing that, had to do cross-sections again through that whole study area, and we established where the floodplain was, and it's the 100-year floodplain plus 25% of the flood hazard area. And then we had to establish what we can and can't encroach on which in this case, we're not encroaching on it at all. And it generally stays within the banks of the pond area. If you go out there in the water surface pond, it's still lower, about 5 foot lower than the grade next to it, up near the parking lot or up near the ring road. But what it does still do is it comes out of the banks around the car wash, and then on the other side of the street, over where the Hovnanian development is, that stays within the banks there. So we spent a lot of time studying it. We have submitted the detailed studies and the impacts to DEP, and they're under review right now. We're only about a month in of their review. But what we're able to do for quantity control, we're using the delays or the timing of the flood through that detention basin and that outlet structure. Additionally, we have to look at the other elements, which is infiltration. And in doing the studies for infiltration on this property, we put, I think it was 47 holes throughout the 46 test locations throughout the property. And it is the typical Bedminster shale, and we could not find any infiltration. So, and if we could, it makes candidly the job easier, but if you can't, and you have to prove you can't have any infiltration, and there's a certain requirement of the number of tests per acre that you'd have to do for that, you submit that data to DEP, and they would then conclude that you do not have to do infiltration on this because just the soils don't infiltrate. So we're in the midst of that process. We've submitted that data as part of our application to DEP. The other aspect that we have to do...
Ron, I got a question for Paul, actually. So Paul, when you have a pond like this that's 30-some odd years old, does that capacity of that pond erode and the retention capabilities of that pond erode over the 30 years of silt and crap coming downstream or whatever the heck that doesn't get necessarily maintained or cleaned out, et cetera?
The short answer is no, because that's all below the water surface elevation when there's no flood. So it could be completely full to the current water surface elevation, and it would be the same as if it is fully, all water underneath. It doesn't matter because the storage below the normal water surface elevation is dead storage. It does not matter for stormwater control.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for Ron. Ron, you did surveys upstream and downstream. Did your team go out there during Hurricane Ida or afterwards and see
I'll talk
any
about
difference?
that. Yeah. Unfortunately, in that neighborhood, I spent about 40 hours within about 1,000 foot of that neighborhood over Ida, during it and then after it. So I'll go through some of that detail, and we'll go through that. But yes, we did, and the good news is we're very comfortable with the study because it matched it, and I'll spend a couple of minutes talking about that. But before I get into that aspect, the green that's on this plan, the green that's on here, is the third component of stormwater management, which we have to do, is water quality. So water quality is a key component now of stormwater management with green infrastructure. And what you're going to hear about is some techniques that I know I haven't proposed in Bedminster Township before that we're using in the new green infrastructure. And it's going to be porous pavement underneath some of the parking lots. It's going to be biofiltration or rain gardens in 2 that are going to be in the front of the building in the active area of this one-off, the living street. And there's going to be 2 other basins in the rear. And so we're going to have underground water quality through the techniques of porous pavement, and we're going to have rain gardens, and we're going to have bioretention basins that'll be in here. Because they don't infiltrate, the rain gardens and the biofiltration, actually even the porous pavement, they will have to have under drains because that water's not going to go all the way down into the ground. So it's going to get treated through horizon, according to the DEP standards, then it's going to be collected once it gets treated and then brought out to a collection system and then ultimately discharge towards the stream corridor itself. So it's, I'll say it's not complicated, but there's a lot of moving parts in order to put this together. Just as a reference, there's 17 different systems of these porous pavements that have to be analyzed. So even if it's 2 or 3 parking spaces, that's its own separate little basin that has to have an analyzing. So when we give a stormwater report that's usually an inch or 2, this thing's, I don't think you printed it out, Paul, it was like 12 or 1,400 pages. because of all these little micro systems that have to be designed. So it's good for the paper industry, but there's a lot with it. But again, each one is a little microcosm that has to be designed separately. It's not all melded together. So I don't think, you don't have any porous pavement projects, right, Paul, in this town? I don't think so. So it'll be the first one with that. And with porous pavement, it works. We've seen it for years, but it has an obligation of maintenance. And the good news with that is you have an owner that's going to be maintained, and it's not someone that long-term ownership that is of a property that's been represented to you, as opposed to a condominium association or other things that you have to be concerned about some of the maintenance associated with it. Now, that all being said, is no infiltration, water quality. We have the peak rates of runoff and the comparisons to the peak rates of runoff based on the tension. And then after the study, Lou, is we went out there, within probably 10 or 11 o'clock the next day, and it's like, okay, what happened? And we knew other areas in town with some of the other things I do as a hobby. It blew out, many, many different areas that we've never seen water in the past. And we just, areas that we were rescuing people out that were just like, well, why here? And it was odd. But when we went down here the next day, is I think there's 6 of us from my office went down there with our cameras ready to say, oh my gosh, what happened? And it was totally within the banks, which was great. There's a large pipe that goes underneath the ramp and then underneath into 287 and 78, totally intact. You could see exactly where the water lines were based on the leaves that were on the fences that were around there. The model showed it bleeding a little into Pluckerman Park itself, into not the ball field, but there's a wood line behind the ball field that's pretty big. There was some water in there, but not much. We thought there would be more that bled into that area, but it stayed totally within the banks inside the pond area itself. We have plenty of photos of that. It went underneath the culverts that are the 3 culverts underneath the ring road, and it behaved as the model had. Now, the model only had a 100-year storm, which is 8 inches. Yeah, so, but this was 10 inches of rain that we got to Ida, so we actually had a bigger rain event than what the model was run for. So, it worked from that standpoint. So we felt comfortable, even after the analysis being done, that it was tested on a bigger storm event than what was actually modeled for. And it held within the banks.
It was a great live test.
Yeah, I mean, it's just timing. For some things, timing worked to the benefit. Other things, it did not. Not on this project, but on other things. But this worked. Okay. Lastly, I'll say that my part of the testimony, we're just going to talk about on the office side, we're just adding more lights because of the new parking lot. I just want to show that exhibit.
Even though you have the pervious pavement, Ron, sorry to interrupt you, even though you have the pervious pavement, that's 1-for-1 still coverage, right?
It still counts as coverage.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. No, it's still. And
No discounted calculations for...
No. No, and again, your ordinance is not impervious coverage. Your ordinance is lot coverage. And your planning team was very careful in how it defined it. It's not impervious coverage. You call it lot coverage, and you define it differently than other municipalities as far as impervious coverage. All right, again, pretty simple, the off-site lighting for the new park, or the lighting for the office. The new parking areas, we show the new lights that we're putting out there. What's not modeled in this that Mr. Farrar is asking for is we got to show the existing lights and show the modeling of the existing lights, so we'll do that. And show the isolux lines or the point-to-point on the existing parking lot as well. Tom Bauer is going to talk about the lighting all around the multifamily because it's a little unique from what's being proposed there. All right, so that being said, the conclusion is 2 things. One is the design waivers we're requesting. There's 2 elements of the design waivers that we're talking about here. The first one is that 3-tier management buffer system that's in your section. It's called section 13506E as an echo. And the second one is the tree replacement ordinance and the tree ordinance. So I'll go through the basics of this. I think we'll get some more on Tom, but a lot of this, especially with the buffers, is really all the things that I'm going to be speaking about, so I can talk through that. So on the need for how Bedminster controls its stream corridors are defined a couple of different ways. In 13506D, in the natural features, it requires a 50-foot conservation easement along all water courses. We've been doing that for years. A 50-foot on either side of the banks, that's going to be on here. Town has a conservation easement associated with that. The second part of it is in 13506E, watercourses and their ecologic habitat shall be protected by buffers established and maintained in two ways. One is along any watercourse that's either perennial or intermittent stream by the soil survey, the USDA soil surveys. It wants a 20-foot water course along the center line. So that's less than the 50-foot. I don't know why that's in there, but that's part of it. And then the second part of it is along any water course identified in a blue line stream on the USGS survey maps. There's a 3-tier managed buffer system that should be maintained to promote and enhance the water quality. And it's an odd system, and I'll go through it. This was for people, maybe George, you were here when Dennis Adasco was here. This was a Dennis Adasco special.
Yeah, I wasn't here when he was.
Okay, so I'm going to go through it.
I'm not that old.
Paul was here.
I'm old.
I've never had, we haven't done this before. I've never asked for this and looked at this part of it, but it has 3 criteria. It has a stream-side buffer, which is 25 feet. Stream-side buffer, 25 feet. Then it has this thing called a forest buffer, okay, in the forest buffer, it's 25 foot plus. It has 5 different criteria, whether there's moderate coverage, severe coverage, or extreme coverage. And then if it's in trout stocked areas or trout production or trout maintenance areas, you got to add other factors on top of it. So in this case, if we look at the forest, stream-side buffer is 25, forest buffer 25 plus, we had to pick the extreme, which is the worst case because it's an existing development, it's a parking lot, so there's no coverage. There's just 0. So that's another 60 feet. So you need 85 foot on top of the 25 foot. And then there's an outer buffer of an additional 25 foot. It just seems, I remember sitting in some of those meetings, I can't understand the basis of some of these things. But obviously there's a tier system for buffers. In this case, in this particular case, we're not in the C1 waters that are in Bedminster Township and a good part of Bedminster Township. And by there, it's all regulated by DEP, where you have 300-foot riparian buffers and you have 150-foot wetlands transition areas. We're very used to that, when we have buffers associated with that. Here, you have a non-trout stream, not in great shape, as far as that compared to the Axel Brook or the Lamington River and the upper reaches of that. And it's in an existing parking lot where we're asking the relief for that, and it has no, well, I shouldn't say it has no exemptions, that's wrong, that it calls out this buffer. What it says in here that the board, no development except driveways or other accesses shall be located within any stream corridors. And again, it's not stream buffers, stream corridors, which is the 50-foot stream corridor that we've been doing forever. In that same section, it refers you back to 13-605-11 stream corridors. It says that no development except driveways or access shall be located within any stream corridors unless the applicant can demonstrate that there's no feasible or practical alternative location for the development, or the application conforms to the requirements of the paragraph below, which basically says you do the right soil conservation measures and do the right during construction in subchapter A. So we're looking for relief in it. I know I spent some time talking to Paul about this. We think we're right with the numbers, that it's 25 for the stream side buffer, it's 85 foot for the forest buffer, and then it's 25 foot for the outer buffer. So we're good on those aspects of it. It looks like it allows relief if we can see that there's no practical alternatives. That's in there. And again, the area that we need relief on is an existing parking lot, that we're not taking additional trees down other than a tree or two that is in a landscape island that's there that we're removing. So we're going to ask for relief, the board for relief. It's a design waiver, it's not a variance. It's in your standards that are not zoning, but it's in your design standards, so it's an exception or design waiver. But we spent some time going through it. It's interesting language. But in this case, we think we understand what the requirement is. There's avenues for relief if we can prove that there's not practical alternatives, and in this case, it's a parking lot today, and the new proposal is, some of it's going to be buildings, but some of it's going to be detention basin and lawn areas, so it's not all impervious that's there today. So from a land cover standpoint, we're actually getting better than what's there today as just 100% impervious coverage.
So, I have a question for Paul. The buffer is applied even over the existing parking lot to the north of the pond.
This is, it's an interesting question, because what, let me start with what we have today. Today we have riparian zones, as you're aware of, that are delegated by, or regulated by the DEP. And the riparian zone is whatever it is, and the riparian zone can go into a paved area, but if it's a paved area, there's no riparian zone to be, there's no vegetation to be disturbed, so then it's really not a regulated riparian zone. This buffer standard was established to try to improve water quality along streams. It was kind of different. The thought was, well, somebody's already cleared it all the way down to the stream, what can we do to recreate that buffer? That's kind of the thought process that was behind this, is, if I can recall in my old age, since I was old enough to be around when this was done.
I'm trying to forget, Paul.
I tried to, but the more
Unfortunately, I
Ron
can't
spoke,
forget.
the more I remember.
Uh-oh.
But, so I think the intent and purpose of this buffer was to try to improve the near stream vegetation quality. So there are numbers in the ordinance as to how wide those buffers can be and how they need to be reestablished. I think the point that Ron is trying to make is that there are more areas of vegetation, there's more water quality occurring in that streamside buffer than there was before. So while it may not be the full width of revegetated area envisioned by the ordinance, it's still accomplishing that goal in ways that were not even thought of back when this ordinance was done.
I mean, I'm just looking at the ordinance now, and I'm not certain that the drafting reflects what you're saying. That may have been the intent from those discussions. I'm just wondering if this is even applicable to extending a buffer across an existing parking lot.
It doesn't say that, though, right? It just says blue line stream, and it stops.
But, I mean, there's language in here talking about, the intent, identifying natural features, natural drainage areas, removal of topsoil for areas that were intended for open space. I mean, I'm just wondering if
I think
is a waiver required, because this may not be applicable. And I'm just, I hear the engineers talking about what it means. I'm just wondering if this is, if it is applicable.
Yeah.
I have an additional question. What was there first, the parking lot or the ordinance?
The parking lot. by
Parking lot.
decades.
So the parking lot was pre-existing to the ordinance?
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
Does that play into it at all in terms of decisions?
Well, I mean, anything, on reasons for granting relief of anything would be the pre-existing conditions that were there. Obviously, we're not going to take a parking lot and make a woods out of it if it's pre-existing. If it was just a farm field already, a lot of this is written that it's a farm field already or a wooded area already, and we want those buffers to support all those things in the wooded area. And again, up in the northern part of the town, that's what I understand is what the goal was. But in this particular case, in a higher density where it's been developed quite a bit already, it's hard to practically apply that, not just to this project, but to any projects along there. And again, the argument is this was pre the riparian buffer ordinances or regulations by DEP, and they have a very rigid process throughout the state of how they do that in different tiers, and we're complying with that. All right, the other thing, and this is much simpler, is just the tree ordinance itself. Right now, the plan shows the removal of about 144 trees that's being shown. If we put the calculation together with the replacements by a certain size, that you gotta replace 5 for every 1 tree, or 10 for every tree for a bigger size, it calls for 900 trees to be replaced in that. Right now, the plan, and you're going to see a really detailed exhibits on the landscaping, we have 259 trees that are shown on the plan, but because of some of the gardens and the rain gardens and the other aspects, there's an extensive shrub details that are there, oversized shrubs, that there's 1,983 of those. So Tom Bauer's going to go through that detail. We're going to ask for relief. We don't have enough room to put certainly 900 trees back on this property. But the combination of the 259 trees that are proposed plus the 1,983 trees, you're going to see a pretty extensive landscaping plan that we think models the objectives of what this tree replacement ordinance is trying to do. And we got a pretty dense site as opposed to other properties that not as far as what's allowed for lot coverage, and we're infilling it with pretty high density landscaping. And you'll see that through the presentation. But we're going to ask for relief on that as well.
But this is not the testimony on the tree relief, or is
No,
this gonna
because
be
I'll have to come back and do that.
Okay.
Again, we got to get Tom to talk about that. You don't have a basis of making judgments on that until you really see it. I just want to give that as a prelude to it. And that's really the overview. There's a review letter by Paul. I pretty much talked about those items that are on there already. One issue was the EDC controls the sewers on the neighborhood itself. There's a pump station that EDC owns on this property. We're working with them on just getting a service agreement with them to tie into that pump station. Signage comments will be covered by Gary. As far as circulation signage, stop signs, stop bars, those types of things, not the signs. Physical signs themselves, Dave Min is going to cover in his discussion. That's it.
Ron, I don't think you talked about, and maybe somebody else will do that, exactly how the access from this site will go over to the Pluckman Schoolhouse Park. Because you show a crosswalk that goes to a curve, and it ends there.
Yeah, Tom will talk about it in general terms. I'm going to have to detail it eventually. There's like a 4-foot grade change that we're going to have to get down into that area there. And we're going to have to detail that out. Because we want it, I assume you want it accessible, right? Accessible.
The first point is, I just wanted to know that you're going to actually make.
Oh, yeah, and let me just point to it, just to make sure. Can you go to the blow one? The question though on the details of that, Paul, is we may have to do some grading into the town property.
I understand that.
Because just, we won't be able to make a ramp long enough to do that, because it's only about 10 foot from the drive. So just, so Burt Mills Road's on the top. This is the arcade or the front of the retail. On the other side, this is the existing driveway here. This is where the connection's going to be. So we have a grade change that'll come from there and we'll go into the front.
Right.
So
And the other reason why I raised it, because you ended at the curb.
Yeah, we're going to have to go inside. The question from the town standpoint is how far do you want us to take that walkway in? Do you want us to bring it into the parking lot at the same distance off of Burnt Mills Road, or do you want us to wrap it around into the parking lot?
I think we can look at some details of that. I think the simplest connection is the best.
Okay.
The simplest and shortest.
So then we wrap it around and tie into the sidewalk on Burnt Mills, closer to Burnt Mills.
Well, I don't know, maybe it just goes to the parking lot that's straight ahead of you as you come in.
It could be.
We'll look at those details.
Okay.
Ron, about the trash enclosures, are you going to talk about that or the architect?
The architect's going to talk. They're inside the building, and
Okay.
it's a whole system, and I think we need him to explain how,
That's fine.
Dave to explain how they work.
Okay,
One of the items that I brought up was, there's a lot of, for lack of a better term, street furniture, and those amenities all around here. And I don't know how much the board wants to get into the details on those, as to what they may look like. And, I'm sure the architect is going to talk about those, but I want the board to make sure you understand exactly what's going to be out there.
yeah, okay,
Because
good.
there are shaded
structures, there are picnic tables, all those elements.
Okay. Okay, anybody have any more questions for Ron right now? We'll open it up to the public, see what the public has.
While we're on it, Larry, I definitely understand your reticence about the application of that ordinance, but when I look at it, it does say for all site plans and subdivisions, you shall do these things. But whenever you do something like this that is an existing condition, you also take into account, as Ron mentioned, the existing condition and what are you moving from and to. And so I think it's a case-by-case scenario in general, but in their case, they properly ask for you to give what's called a site plan or subdivision exception or waiver. It's pretty straightforward. If practical difficulties justify it, you could find that you'll grant it. And that would be the same for the tree replacement as well. So we've done that before. It's a common thing to do, particularly in situations in which there is existing condition that is actually being improved.
So
And by the way, the DP does the same thing, and it's a different way they do it, but it's...
an applicant could never assert it's not applicable. We have to decide it's not applicable.
I'm telling you as your attorney that the way it's written, it's applicable, so it's better to deal with it as an exception.
But we have to decide as a board
whether to grant the exception. And Ron has properly laid the foundation of the testimony, the expert testimony justified an exception if you were to so find. So.
Okay, anyone on the public, Janine? You see no one? Okay, all right, we'll
Thank
close
you.
it to the public. Thank you, Ron.
So for housekeeping, I'd
Next.
like to mark this A2, and I believe this is 8 sheets as well. And all this site plan engineering exhibits.
A2, Nat, you're going to give those by digital copy
Yes.
to Janine. That'll be A2. Thank you, gentlemen.
My next witness is David Minnow, Minnow and Wasco Architects and Planners.
Dear Mr. Minow, please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm that tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth shall be done?
I do.
And please state your name, spell your last name, and give us an address.
My name is David J. Minnow, M-I-N-N-O, and I'm at 80 Lambert Lane, Lambertville, New Jersey.
The board has previously recognized Mr. Minnow as a registered architect, but the board members may not have met Mr. Minnow before, so if you would like him to quickly summarize his qualifications, I'll defer to you.
Yeah, want to hear his, okay, just give us an overview of your qualifications.
I'm going to give the board the benefit of your professional qualifications.
Sure.
Experience.
I have a Master's of Architecture from the University of Pennsylvania. I'm a registered architect in good standing in the state of New Jersey for, I think, 39 years, and I am president of Minnow and Wasco Architects and Planners. We're about a 90-person firm with offices in Lambertville and Newark, New Jersey. And I've qualified before this board and many others throughout the state as a witness on architecture.
I'd like to ask that Mr. Minnow be qualified as an expert.
Yes, I would suggest.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So I am excited to be here tonight to tell you about a beautifully designed lifestyle mixed-use community which has an inclusionary component of affordable housing. And it's just going to be a great project, I think, for Bedminster, so I'm really pleased to present it. We had the pleasure of working with Mark Kushner from Major Architecture, who concepted much of it and worked with you through the zoning process. And I have to say that was a pleasure, but I also have to say that the architecture really does meet those standards that were established with the town. And we also received a certificate of appropriateness from the Historic Commission here. And again, we're consistent with what they saw. As I mentioned, it's an amenity-rich program, and that includes both indoor and outdoor space. And the outdoor spaces are becoming increasingly more important in a COVID and post-COVID environment, so we've really placed special emphasis on that, and I've got to work with a great partner over many years, Tom Bauer, on the landscape portion of that. The majority of the parking that we have for the residential is not going to be seen by the public, and that's a great thing. It's really tucked under the building, and I'll show you how that works, and our grade sort of provides an easy way to access that. It's out of sight and out of mind, but it's also a convenient way to live. People park in the lower level and come up through elevators from that level to their units, so they're not schlepping groceries or whatever through the rain to get to their apartment unit. So that sets this really a step above a lot of garden apartment communities. And as was mentioned earlier by Ron, this is a walkable community, and I know Noah talked a good bit about this. The pedestrian accessibility, not only on-site but to off-site, really provides what I call walking wallets into Pluckerman and other retail areas that exist in town. And that's really important. It's not to say that people will do all their shopping within a walkable distance, but the shop owners will see a revival with these households living here, and that's an important thing. So the site plan I think you've seen, and we should maybe move to the next sheet. This is the lowest level, and to orient you, on the left-hand side of the drawing is the loop road, and we're coming into that lower parking lot that accesses the entrance to the parking deck. And in this parking deck, we have 212 parking spaces, including handicap spaces. And this is where a lot of our service occurs for the building. I know there's questions on how does move-in occur for a residential tenant. And this is really a scheduled event, and management really schedules this with tenants moving in. And they only are able to come with small box trucks and vans, maybe a U-Haul small rental. And that's scheduled at a particular hour for a particular length of time. And there's a parking space, a service parking space in the back, and a double door entry right near that, which provides access through the garage to the elevator system in the building. The other thing that I think was talked about a little bit before was trash and recyclables. And that too is a managed system. We have up in the yellow areas at the top portion of the sheet, we have our elevator cores, but on the back side of those we have trash rooms, trash termination rooms. So trash comes down the chute. If you go to the other side there, yeah, there's the trash. Yeah. There's a large trash room. Trash comes down the chute, gets compacted into smaller bags, and there's a small little tractor kept in there with a wagon, almost the size of a lawn tractor. And building management takes that trash out through that rear service door to the loading space for a very short duration of time. The trash is picked up by a private hauler and taken away. Same thing with recyclables. Recyclables don't really go through the chutes. They're collected by building management on each floor in the trash room. There's a recycle bins there, and they're brought down the elevator and brought down to the trash termination room and come out the same way to the loading dock. So this is all a very managed type of system. And we'll talk a little bit more about the retail loading when we get to that portion of the building. We also have bike storage in the garage. It's very convenient. It's right down near the entry to the garage on the lower side right there. And we can get approximately 150 bicycles stored there. And our entry lobbies, as I mentioned, there's an elevator right there in the backside on the yellow area, and 2 elevators up to the front side of the building. Let's move up to the next plan. So this is the plan that's on the board there, and this shows our first and main level. And this is where it gets very exciting, where the interface between sort of that public realm out front toward Burnt Mills Road and the retail and our residential lobby. So this is a very active place and a very beautifully designed place. The wound roof was mentioned, and Tom will spend more time on that, but that's the tan area to the top of the drawing, which really is a term for special paving and continuous paving across both pedestrian and vehicular areas. And that provides access to the front door of the building. There's both steps and a ramp which come to the front door because our grade is up from that lower level, but we have a handicap ramp at that level. And our retail spaces on either side, I think, are really beautifully designed to have cafe dining out in front. We do expect food and beverage to be located here. And was mentioned, the Bank of America is moving to the left side, right near the loop road and our entrance to the front parking lot. The way the drive-through works, it's in the rear of the building, so it's not visible from Burnt Mill Road, but the signage would take people into the lower part, into that U-shaped parking lot, and then into the drive-through area right behind the bank. So very clear circulation handled through signage, and it's sort of out of sight, out of mind from the main part of the building. Moving to the center portion, to the rec area, I'm going to have a blow-up plan of that, but just backing out, as you come into our community through the main front doors, you're actually looking out to that major courtyard, which sits over top of the parking deck. And that's a great, it has both passive areas, it has active areas in the pool. We have grilling areas there because people can't grill on their balconies. It's not permitted by building codes, so we provide places for them to grill. And we have outdoor seating areas that can be used in the evening with fire pits and the like. And then, as Tom will explain, the courtyard on the right-hand side, the eastern courtyard, is a little bit more of a passive courtyard, and we have some gardening there and a few other activities. So it's really a sort of a beautiful lifestyle community that really integrates both indoors and outdoors.
Are those areas blocked off from the general public?
Again, I think Tom's going to help you with that, but the one on the east has some access from that sidewalk that moves around the side. The one in the back, you'll see a stairway, which gets us from the lower grade back there, because grade is low as you get toward the stream area. That's a required sort of fire access to get up onto the amenity deck above the garage. So there would be access.
I'm sorry, the pool is on top of the garage?
Yeah, it is, yeah. Yep, we do it all the time. It's partially sunk into the garage and partially raised above. It's about a 4-foot deep water area in the pool. So, yeah, it's a great way to do it. Usually those pools are stainless steel in construction, so they're welded stainless steel base, so they don't leak. So.
Nobody's going to hit it underneath when they're driving under it?
I'm sorry?
Nobody's going to run into it like a tall vehicle or anything if they're driving underneath it in the garage?
No, we have good headroom there.
Okay.
So what I'd like to do is move to the next drawing, which sort of blows up our ground floor amenity spaces. Maybe that's not the next drawing. Sorry. But stay where you are. So this shows how our two residential buildings on either side, east and west, rise up. This is the actual third floor plan. We show here both market rate and COA units, affordable housing units, located on the same floors and mixed in very nicely. You cannot tell driving by or walking by this project or even in the hallway where an affordable unit is versus a market rate, and I think that's a beautiful thing. Just to reiterate some of these data on the units that Ron mentioned, we have a total of 160 units, and in the market rate product, we have 39 one-bedrooms and 97 two-bedrooms for 136 market rate units. And then our COA mix is sort of a required mix by UHAC, and we have 4 one-bedrooms, 15 two-bedrooms, and 5 three-bedroom units for a total of 24 affordable units.
Does COLA require the 3-bedroom and those proportions?
They do. They require 20%, basically 20% ones, 60% twos, and 20% threes.
They also have different gradations of affordability,
They do.
and where would this slot in those gradations?
Well, we would have a combination of low and moderate, and then a small percentage of very low income. It's really as per your affordable housing ordinance. And we're going to stipulate that we would meet all those requirements. Let's go to the next slide. So this is the roof plan, and the only reason I really show you the roof plan is you'll see those boxes or those rectangles with smaller boxes indicated inside of them. Those are where many of our condensing units are located. And what actually happens is that the roof comes up and creates an interior trough, so we can set those mechanical units and screen them at a lower level than the roof pitch. So as you're walking and driving around, you won't see those condensing units on the roof. So it's a very nice way to handle that. Next slide, please. So this is, maybe you could blow this up just a tiny bit, Chris. Okay, so this is our main amenity indoor interior space. And on the top edge is our entry vestibule coming in from the wound roof and the retail area. And we have a cafe, coffee bar located on the left-hand side there. And we have some co-working space inside. This is for residents only, but it's a very popular amenity in this COVID world. People like private little areas to work outside of their unit. We have some ability for people to plug in and work quietly in a nice environment. As you come on through, we have a lounge seating area. Working our way to the back, and we're looking out the French doors to the rear space. And I want you to take note on both sides of this entry pavilion. The architecture is very special. When we get there, we'll show it to you, but the articulated masonry fronts, you see the triangular step backs, that's articulated masonry arches that form those window and door areas on both sides of the entry pavilions. And then moving again to the back, we have fireplaces that are through fireplaces from the lounge to the TV area and to the library on the left. On the far left-hand side, the gray area is our leasing area, and that's where our leasing staff works. And we also have a package room there. Package delivery is a key function for these buildings, and it's, again, a managed function. There'll be package lockers there. People get a delivery while they're at work. They get a text message that their package is in locker number 37, and they get the access code for that locker. When they come home from work, they simply go there, pick up their package, and take it to their unit. Right opposite that area is the mail room, just below Retail 1 there. And moving to the right-hand side, if you can shift over a little bit past the, yeah, there we go. We have our demonstration kitchen, and this is an area where at times there'll be chefs brought in to teach small cooking classes, or you could reserve that room for a private dining event. And then we have our restrooms, which access both the interior spaces, but then the door from the outside comes into that hallway to allow access to those restrooms from the pool area. We also have an outdoor dining area just outside of that, so that in good weather that can extend directly out to the patio area. And then looking at the patio, and I'm going to let Tom do most of this, but we do have our grilling areas there, and then some more passive space, and then the more active pool area.
So, just so I understand, the area in the dark tan, that's all residential access only, right? That's not public access?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and that'll be,
Did I miss something? Because I thought when we conceptualized this project, that main architectural feature in elevation from the street was supposed to be community space where public meeting could be held, the Cub Scouts could have a meeting and those kinds of things. That is my recollection. Am I the only one that recalls that?
I remember that as well.
our intent is to have that area for residents only. There is a pavilion across the street that is going to be a retail, and there's outdoor areas associated with that as well. And we'll talk about that in just a moment.
I think that's a change, but okay.
So let's move on to the next drawings. I'd like to start giving you just an idea, and these are theme images of some of these spaces. This would be that a look of that club room area with gaming area, lounge area, TVs. See the low bar in the center of the photograph. We would have an area like that for food setup and hors d'oeuvres for small parties, and then accessing directly out French doors to the rear patio areas. Next. This would be an image of that demonstration kitchen, and this is in one of our projects. We do this quite often, and it can either be used for small private parties or someone coming in and teaching a cooking class. And the next slide is showing co-working lounge. This shows some common area and then some smaller carrels on the left where people can sit and do their work outside of their dwelling unit. Very popular amenity. Next. So I want to move to the exterior, and I want to talk to some of these perspective views. This is really a low aerial view of the community entry to the project and the festival plaza. And this shows where in the foreground is Burnt Mill Road, and you see directly the building with the 3 arches is our main entry to the residential building. And on the far right-hand foreground of the picture is that 2,000 square foot community retail space with outdoor community table area in front. You can start to see the festival lighting. I think Tom's going to show you some night shots of what this looks like. And then on the left-hand side in the foreground, you see some of the retail entries there with the black metal canopy, and then the retail on the far right of our residential entry. So the architecture here is really meant to be, as Noah mentioned, the transition between the more contemporary office buildings and the more traditional village of Pluckham. And you see the wound roof paving tying the 2 areas across the drive lane there. One other thing to mention while we're on this slide, there is a signage there that I'm going to mention later saying Bedminster 1. That's a low freestanding letter signage element that we're going to have right at the entry of the project. Next slide. This is a bit of an evening view with a little bit more detail showing you the brick arches as you enter the building. This is going to be high quality. That's a stone area. I'll be showing you pictures of the stone that we're going to be using. Beautifully designed masonry detailing with the 3 gabled roofs facing forward. Here you see the steps, but behind the Bedminster 1 sign is the ramp for handicap ramp going up to the main front door.
Quick question.
Sure.
Who's using that front door? If that space is private space behind it and the residents are parking either underneath or behind the building?
Well, guests and visitors would be coming there. Deliveries for FedEx, Amazon, those types of things would be using that. And there is some mixed parking out front. If you were parking for a short duration, a resident might park there.
So how many delivery trucks can park there?
Well, there's a pull-off lane, and those are short duration deliveries. They last a minute or 2 as the guy takes the packages out, runs them in to the leasing center front desk, and they're accepted there.
Yeah, how many?
How many packages?
No. How many trucks?
I would let Ron comment on the dimensions of it, but I would imagine you could get 2 trucks at a time there.
Seems awfully low.
Well, again,
I mean, everybody gets everything delivered today, I'm just asking.
yeah, no, they come and, you know, there'll be a FedEx truck, there'll be a UPS truck.
I know, and they're there with the blinker.
The Amazon 10 times a day.
They're very short duration. Those guys have packages to deliver.
Excuse me,
Uh,
I have a
Sure.
clarifying question. So this 3-tiered roof structure in the front is the main entrance to the entire complex, the residential complex?
It's the ceremonial main entrance. There are other entries around the building that are more, I would say, fire exit oriented. We do have, I'll go back in a minute and show you the one on the left-hand side, on the western side, where we do have some additional parking in the rear there. But there are several entries to the building. But day to day, if you're living there, most of your entry to the building will occur through the garage.
What if
Mr.
someone...
Chris are available to answer these questions about the entrances, exits,
Oh,
and
okay.
use of the different spaces as soon as Mr. Renaud puts
Sure.
this
Okay.
Yeah, but why don't we move on? So this perspective view is taken just to the right of the main entryway, and it shows the continuation of the theme of the arches, and we're switching here from a stone material to a brick material. And again, we see the ability along that frontage for cafe dining at the entry to restaurants. There may be other shops along that area. And you start to see the beautiful landscaping and walls that are there. And then above that, the 2 stories above that are showing the residential units and their balconies and the peak dormer elements that add relief to the building.
Can you go back a couple of slides to the big picture of bed 1?
Sure.
All right, so if I reference that image, where is the one that we were just on with the, now go 3 pages forward there.
Just to
Chris.
the right there, if you look through the trees, you begin to see an arch. Just to,
So go 3 pages forward.
I'm sorry?
Come on, yeah, where's that?
That was just to the right of the main entry, with the 3 main arches and the 3 peak.
I can't see that detail.
Yeah.
You're standing here. that would be that
Trees
way.
are
Yep.
in the way.
Okay, but I don't see that from that first image at all, because it's just shielded by the trees.
It's shielded by the trees.
And it looks like that big gable, that goes 3 stories, comes right down to the street.
It's just to the left of this picture, that large gable.
They don't look the same.
Where is it? Here?
Yeah.
I think it's a little further than right, Rich.
You say so?
Like
Yeah.
over here.
Way over.
Way over. It's not just to the right of it, it's a little further to the.
Maybe go
Yeah.
back to this one, Dave.
Yeah.
The,
Yeah, that's what it was.
There's a whole big building between.
Yeah, right.
It's
over here.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's up here, because this rain garden, is that,
Yes.
Okay.
Apologies.
I see it to the left.
Apologies.
Left, yeah.
That's what we're throwing.
Chris is
There
correct.
you go.
Yeah, so we're looking at this. Okay, that makes sense.
I'm not crazy.
Not about that.
Rick, you're not wrong. I'm okay with it being a little crazy.
Rich, when are you playing UPenn in football?
All right, if we could move on to the next one. This shows the retail pavilion out along Burnt Mill Road. Burnt Mill Road is to the right of this picture, and we're looking down the wound roof paving that's shared between cars and pedestrians. And it's going to be a great spot. Again, there's more outdoor pedestrian seating to the right here as you move around this landscaped island. Next shot.
So again, a deviation here. So if we go back to that image, where it says retail right on the side of the building.
Yes.
You're suggesting that this becomes somewhat of that common space that we're talking about?
It's common in the sense that it's open to the public, yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Christopher will bring it back up to address what's common and what's not.
Okay, all right.
And is there a restroom for the public in that pavilion area you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the next slide is a view of the courtyard that's on the eastern side of the building, what I would call the more passive courtyard. And here I wanted to talk a little bit about the body of our materials, and I'll be showing you actual material samples. In the project, we have 2 colors of brick masonry. We have stone veneer on the very front and rear of that main entry portal. We have composite fiber cement vertical siding, and we have composite fiber cement wood look panels. And you saw that on the front of the building on some of those large gable areas. We have a standing seam metal roof in places, again, more toward the front in the retail area. We have metal railings, as you can see on the residential units, and they're a black color. And we have a shadow line shingle roof and aluminum storefront glazing in the retail and entry storefront. The buildings are 3 stories by your building code or by your zoning, and they're 55 feet in height, which meets the ordinance requirement.
Dave, that picture, the main, I guess in the center, you got what, I guess these are concrete or cement board that's running vertical.
Could you blow that up a little bit? So you can see the, if you go up on the building portion, there you see the vertical wood look cement board siding on the top 2 stories of that gabled element, and then masonry on the bottom.
Is that same feature, is that in the front, facing the public area as well?
Yes, you have some of that in those large gables in the very front. Yep.
On either side of that main entrance.
Yeah, okay.
That panel right there.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Dave, can I ask a general question about all of the landscape furniture, the tables out in front there along Burnt Mills Road?
Can you
as well?
save that for Tom Bauer?
Okay,
He's really going to,
okay.
he's the expert on that one. Let's keep moving. And this last rendering that I'm going to show you is showing the main amenity courtyard with the grilling areas in the foreground, the pool, and some of the shade structures in the distance. And here you see the main body of the 3-story architecture along that courtyard with turned gables, divided light windows, very attractive balcony areas. And the ground floor units that are on that area have their own ground level patio instead of a balcony. Next slide. So this slide focuses in on signage, and we are compliant with all our signage. I'm giving you this for more informational purposes, but the sign on the lower left is our monument sign. If you look on the site plan up in the upper left-hand corner, it's a sign that's perpendicular to Burnt Mill Road. It's on our property, it's 2-sided, and that particular sign qualifies as our freestanding sign. The next slide, the next signs that I wanted to talk about are on the upper right-hand drawing of the entryway. There's an area that's highlighted in red, and I pointed it out when we looked at the rendering. That's a sign that says Bedminster 1, and that's raised lettering, and I'm going to show you an example of that, a photograph of that type of lettering in just a minute. That is a 50 square foot maximum sign, and we comply. And then along the retail store frontage, we have the potential for retail signage within those arched areas at each space, and those, I believe, are 24 square foot maximum signs for each of the retail tenants. And then on the lower right, we have two signs on the pavilion. The one on the lower left faces Burnt Mill Road, and then the other sign that's on the gable end on the right-hand side, that faces the entry, the parking lot entry, as you come into the Woon Roof area.
Quick question, so each one of those individual signs, that could be a possible retail location, so you have up to 18?
It could be. We don't expect it to be broken down that finely. We think there'll be larger tenants, but we just don't know.
Yeah, how large is an individual space there? If we go and look at the smaller ones on each side, or is it about 18?
You know, you can have spaces that are down to like 1,800 square feet, but we expect them to be generally larger than that. Like a restaurant might be anywhere from 3,000 to 5,500 square feet. So.
Dave, has Historic Pres reviewed these? Because I don't think this detail was in the plans that they reviewed, and this is in the Historic District.
Say that again?
I do not believe Historic Pres has reviewed the signage because this was not in the original plans.
That's correct.
So this would all have to be subject to their review as well, correct?
Yes, we'd be happy to go back to them if we need to.
I would suggest that.
I have a question to that as well. I don't remember every detail in the ordinance that we wrote, but in that ordinance, I don't remember signage being part of that ordinance. So I don't know if anyone can correct me on that, but if we have all of these signs and you're saying they're meeting code, my question is, what code? And where did you get that code from?
Well, I'm reading from the sign area summary. Ron, maybe you can help me on that.
It's in the ordinance, Lou. It's
It is?
13407.9.
The new ordinance that we...
New ordinance, the standalone
Okay.
ordinance for this. There's a separate section on the sign.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
Let me show you some examples of these signs. We have some photographs of similar, they might be in a, if you could back out. So if you look at the sign on the upper left, it says the Carson. That would be similar lettering to what we would see on that one Bedminster sign in the front of our building. So they would be internally lit, freestanding elements coming out of the landscape area.
Let me interrupt just for 1 second, because unless this ordinance changes, internally illuminated signs are not permitted.
Okay.
So just
Okay. The rest of the signs are examples of potential retail signs at the storefront. So depending on the exact retailer and their logo and the way they handle the signs, we would be coming back for those retail sign approvals to make sure that they meet the requirements of the ordinance. But the requirements for the storefront signage are 24 square feet per sign. On the material board, for the next hearing, we're going to have the actual samples here. I think we can have it delivered before the next hearing. We were waiting for some specific samples, but the stone is a country field stone, and you see a photographic example of that. That would be used in that front entryway with the arches. We have two different colors of brick, and it's meant to be look like a bit of a distressed historic brick. And then the wood siding, that's actually a cementitious material, but it's meant to look like a wood siding. It's more durable. That's the one on the right. Next slide. The metal railings are indicated as a black material on the upper left. The board and batten siding, we're using an Arctic white. That's the main body of the residential buildings that you see. The standing seam metal roof in the middle shows some of the roofs that are in the retail front section. And then the main body shingle roof is a high quality dimensional shingle. And then the corrugated metal, there's in particular on the left-hand retail pavilion, there's a roof there that comes out with a glass front on it, and that corrugated roof is used.
Is it really board and batten, or is it a panelized thing?
It's panelized. Yeah. So that ends my direct testimony. I'd be happy to take any questions you might have or go back and review things, and maybe Noah wants to comment on the question about the public-private access.
Okay, Dave, we'll call this a A3. Now, some of the things on your PowerPoint slide were in addition to what is the physically
Yeah.
paper one.
We can give you a
An updated
a
one.
flash
yeah.
drive of tonight's presentation.
Could you name, that'd be great. And then the whole slide presentation will be A3. And I had a question for you because I never heard the word before. What's a wound groove? What is that, and what is the spelling? Because I can't spell it.
I'm not sure I can, but Tom Bauer will spell it for you, but it is a continuous paving material that connects both pedestrian and vehicular surfaces. Yeah, it's a term of the art today.
I am old.
I believe it's WOONERF. I believe they will call it drawings before she.
Thank you.
Okay, is it the board?
Yeah,
Ma'am.
a couple of questions. In some of, and Dave, I know that you were not necessarily appearing before us when we were going through this exercise, but the, I don't know what to call it, I guess there were a couple features that were built into the ordinance in recent proposed elevations. I guess that faux chimney looks like it got shortened. Yeah, and it also looks like it moved to the rear, and I think in the original plans it was prominent from the public side.
Right, we've actually, we've made it integrate more with where the fireplace is in plan, which is more to the rear of that amenity area. So,
Mayor, I just, the comments always, I think the historic commission.
But that's the historic commission.
I understand.
That's the historic commission. They don't approve, do they approve site plans?
We were being nice.
So, I mean, to me, it sort of, to me, it changes the way the building looks, and now you've got these well, it changes the dimension of those three peaks in relation to the adjacent buildings next door. To some extent, I think the height that you had before.
It is, right.
Was something a little more consistent. Also, there was a clock tower. The NOAA clock tower is missing now. No, who got rid of your clock tower? Was that Ron?
Historic
Did
Commission?
Ron get rid of your clock tower?
Historic Commission?
So I just look at that, and those were some features that we had talked about, I think, at length. And so it just, I point out to me that from my perspective, it's a little bit different. And I'm just looking for an explanation regarding both those features.
It's called design development.
I know. That's sort of what we went through then.
Yeah.
We went through a design development.
But the chimney, it doesn't even look like it's functional at this point,
No,
right?
it's just there.
Ornament.
And there's a comment about the chimney from the historic.
Yes.
HPC would also encourage architectural change to the evoking central chimney portion. They don't get as much specific. The HPC will also like the river stone shape to be inspired by stable architecture to be rounded and wider rather than church-like. Architecture appears more like a cross shape.
What's the date of that?
That was on July 2nd.
Let's make sure we finish Mr. Mino's cross-examination by the public too, and by the board.
I think we have a few more questions from the board. Colin, there was-
Yeah, the retail pavilion out in front, just speaking, Historic Pres, I think they need to look at that, because I think prior to this, that was just a block on a plan. There was no real detail. So I think they need to take a look at that as well. All right?
Any other board members?
Just a quick question. I know we just talked about this briefly before. I'm just a little concerned about, I know that Rich brought up before, the whole idea of the parking lot underneath the public area and that pool there. Do you have a lot of height under there so that that pool will fit entirely over that parking garage?
We do.
Or is the pool going to stick down into the ceiling of it?
It drops down a little bit, but we have full height in there for the cars.
Just cars though, right? No, like somebody goes in
What
there.
is the
with
height?
Yeah, what is that height?
We have a minimum height of 8'2" in the garage area.
A minimum, so that's under the deepest part of the pool.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a
Chairman, if I
couple.
could just make one quick comment.
Yeah, go right ahead,
Because
Paul.
I know we've got, I just want to catch up, there's been a number of exhibits presented, and they're all going to be digitally given to Janine, but I think she also should get hard copies in case somebody from the public comes in and wants to see them, so you can print those
Sure.
up. and
Yeah, that sounds like a good
hard
idea.
copies of it.
I wonder, do you have any bike racks on the outside area for the public area?
That's a question for Ron and
Okay.
for Tom. I'm just,
Okay.
I spoke to the one indoors in the
Yes,
garage.
okay. Also, they probably, all my questions are, I just want to go back to the trash for one more second. You said that the trash was collected inside and then taken to an area outside, but I don't see that area. That's why I was
Yeah,
looking for it.
maybe I could just point to that. It would be, there's a loading spot right here, and there's an access point into the garage right there. So that's where a trash truck would come, pick up the bins that are put out for a very short duration, and then leave. That's also the same space that would be scheduled by management for move-ins.
How does that trash work for the retail spaces, particularly if you have restaurants out front? They're clearly not going to be able to bring their trash all the way to the back.
Right.
You've got the pavilion that's disconnected from the main building. You've got the retail buildings that could be any kind of a use, including food service. I just don't understand how that trash works.
That again is a building management issue. There'll be, within the retail pavilion, there'll be a small trash area, and building management would bring it, again, with that tractor, they would bring it to the rear of the building for pickup.
I still don't understand how that works. Is there a common corridor behind all the retail spaces, so they bring?
There is, if we can go up to that sheet. It's not shown within the retail space, but there can be a corridor out at least to the right-hand loading area in the front of the building. Retail loading is, again, scheduled in small trucks at off hours.
I'm talking about trash.
Yeah. Trash would be, there's a trash,
I'm a little bit crazy like Rich. I don't understand how it works.
yeah. Trash, again, would be taken by building management from the retail spaces to the rear of the building for pickup.
Out the front door?
Yeah. These are,
Out the front door through the restaurant.
yeah, not during restaurant hours, at off hours.
You're serious?
Yeah, these are small spaces.
But if
You
54
said a restaurant could be up to
restaurant,
5,000 square feet. It's not small.
I guess I simply don't understand how that could possibly work.
Taking the trash out the front door with a tractor?
Well, that's what we're asking the
Well, it might be like a
Architect.
tip dumpster kind of thing?
I'm sorry?
Like a little small 5-yard tip dumpster kind
Yeah.
of thing?
I don't get it.
I don't get it either, I'm sorry. Maybe,
Just don't see how it can work.
maybe management can explain that more.
Got a lot of porters schlepping it back and forth.
So the commercial deliveries and the trash are all going to the front doors
Correct.
in off hours?
So all the food gets delivered through the front door, all the waste, garbage, food goes out through the front door, through the seating of the restaurant.
A bit of a handicap for the businesses.
It's a little bit of a struggle.
I think some thought needs to be put
At least
into
every
that.
restaurant I know has a back door with a garbage bin.
Yeah,
You would need two means of egress anyway, probably.
I would think.
Well, if you, looking at that plan, there is a sidewalk that comes out of the building to the left of the, to the right of the parking lot, right? To the left of the building there? Is that entrance where that sidewalk terminates? Does that enter, does that have access to the retail?
It could when that retail gets specifically designed with each of its tenants, yeah.
I think it's gonna happen, probably gonna happen. And how about on the other side? Well, I guess if you put the gym on that side, but the gym's gonna have maybe a laundry service or something like that that's gonna have to have access. And that access wouldn't be available through the passive garden, so you're gonna have to get stuff from that side of the building to the other side of the building too.
And that's a gym that's accessible to anyone, right? Not just the people who live in the
That's
building.
public.
That's public.
That would be
yeah.
public.
Right, it's a business, yeah. Okay.
I have a question about the pavilion. Is it open, all open, or?
It's not fully designed yet, but the intent is to have large glass areas, almost like a nano wall that open and make it an indoor-outdoor space.
So if I'm riding my bike around and I want to stop there, could I walk in to the pavilion area and like break out a bottle of water and drink it on a table in there, or?
Well, there are outdoor tables.
I'm talking about inside the pavilion because I see the pictures. I'm trying to
They're also
understand.
calling it retail.
Well, that's why I'm trying to
I think
figure
that's-
out,
I
is
think
it
that's
all
what
open?
Noah's
Is
got
it access 24/7? Is it gonna be half retail, half open?
Again, I'm going to let
Okay.
Mr. Krismer answer.
I have a question about the parking. So can we go back to that plan, Chris, where we enter the underground parking?
Sure.
So if the plaza between the two residential structures is at grade, right? And the pool is at grade, and those first floor apartments could potentially be walkout onto grade, right?
Right.
Then you've got, I don't know, maybe 15 feet of driveway. How do you go 8 feet down, enough clearance for your 2 feet of pool in the garage? How do you go 8 feet down and 15 feet?
You don't go 8 feet down. The pool is only 4 feet. It's 2 feet into the
No,
garage.
I'm trying to understand. So here's the first floor of the building, right? I got to get a car underneath that first floor of the building.
Correct.
There needs to be at least 8 feet, probably more like 10,
Yeah.
between the floor of the garage, right?
It's 11, it's
Right,
about
11.
11
Between the
feet.
floor of the garage and the floor above for the apartments.
Correct.
Right? The driveway there, to the left, is that grade, and we're gonna go down 11 feet in,
Now,
I don't know, you tell me, is it 20 feet?
Or is that parking lot drop down further?
What you're not understanding is that parking lot down there where the entry to the garage is already at a lower grade.
So there's a portion of.
So that parking lot out back there is lower than the first floor anyway?
Yeah,
Okay.
the back wall of that parking deck is exposed.
So the building is sitting on some sort of a pedestal or pediment?
In the rear.
In the rear. Okay.
Yeah, look,
I have, I had a question, but I have two comments. The first is, that we've had some times in the past where the Historic Commission made recommendations, and then it wasn't really what we ended up approving here on the board, so that's just a comment about that. I do remember and agree with the mayor about that chimney and the facade and the clock tower, which I thought was a great architectural feature. The second comment is that I also remember with Rich about that entry area being more of a public space, and in reference to this is the picture that we were shown by Mark and by Noah. To me, this picture looks like it's a public space. And so it's fine, it's okay that maybe it's not public, but I wanted to kind of clarify what we were first shown and discussed at that point in time. And then the third is a question. George had questions about the pavilion. I think everyone has questions about the pavilion. We don't have any artistic renditions of what that pavilion is going to look like. So I just think that's kind of open topics.
Well, our elevation sheet A10, which I didn't show, which is at the end of this, I didn't go through all the elevation sheets, but I can if you go past this slide. Keep going. That's part. So this sheet here shows all four elevations of the retail pavilion out front. So it's glass on 3 sides, and then on the west elevation, it's a solid wall. That's back of house on that side.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I don't know if this is for you or not. I wasn't part of the original plan, so I'm a little bit lost as to what's public and what's private. But to the extent part of it's public and part of it's not public, to what extent is any security planned, or are there any, I mean, how's that set up? That people can walk through the apartments, or do you have to be allowed into the apartments, or the park is for the residents only? Can anybody just use that? How's that supposed to be monitored?
I think Mr. Prismer can best answer that question when I recall him.
That's fine, thank you.
The retail pavilion then is all enclosed. It's not open. It's an enclosed pavilion?
It's closed, but our intent is, as we design this, a portion of it may become an openable wall, openable glass wall.
Okay, so the glass might be movable or? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else on the board?
One other quick little question. All those areas on the roof that you're providing for, you know, the condensing units and all of that, are you intending for all, it looks like you have some larger ones there, all of the retail businesses, is their equipment meant to go up there as well?
Not on that roof. Their equipment would be more ground mounted on the side of the building. So
Where on the side? Like in the back, like where the bank drive up is, that part of area there?
yeah, well, there's be some area near that driveway on the right-hand side, and then you see there's a couple of larger units located there in the troughs of the roof.
Right.
Those would also be the air handlers for the retail.
Right, I mean, and then like if it's a restaurant and they need like captive air hose and stuff like that, that there'd be enough place for all that.
Yeah, there are larger rectangles on those front roofs. Those would be more for the retail.
Okay. All right.
Okay, I'll open it up to the public. Okay, check again, please.
Just want to give directions if the public has questions. Take your cursor, scroll to the bottom by participants, click on raise hand.
No, there is no one.
Okay, then we'll close it to the public. And I guess we're ready. You want to take a 5-minute break? Why don't we do that?
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're all set. Next witness?
Chairman, may I proceed?
Yes, please.
Thank you. I'd like to recall Mr. Krismer.
Okay.
Mr. Krismer, can you address some of the open issues that arose during Mr. Mino's architectural testimony?
Sure. So just briefly, and Rich and Lou and the board, you're right, and this is my fault. I didn't effectively communicate this. So apologies to Dave, apologies to the board. That is in the center of the main building is the primary entrance, the focal entrance for the residential apartments. However, it is also open to the public. And we're doing this exact same thing as we represented when we went through the zoning process. That cafe will be open to the public. It's not limited to residents or guests. We're doing this exact same platform at a building we just opened in Jersey City. Not that this is Jersey City, but it proves that you can have a somewhat malleable space between public and private where you invite the public into the space. They can utilize the space. We have a retail coffee shop that is leasing the space at 351 Marin. I'd be happy to have anybody there actually who wants to see how it works, but it's a private owner selling coffee and other treats and stuff like that inside of the building, a public space, and then it sort of transitions without any very clear demarcation into the private space. Elevators are fobbed, so you can't have folks going, and just going in the elevators and going to the apartments. I will say
you'll
if
have
there's
access control throughout this to kind of separate.
Yes, but Rich, that's the one thing that as I look at the drawings is somewhat unresolved to me, and that is that, and we'll come back to you on this at the next hearing with a clear determination of what
Mailroom isn't secure, for example.
Correct. I'm thinking, do we need to partition, do we need to find a space to the left and right of the main place there where we partition it? Our hope would be that we don't, because we like the open feeling and we want it to feel permeable, but I'll go back and I'll come back with a definitive answer at the next hearing. Okay, but again, just to be clear, as was represented through the zoning, this center area here will be public. Okay.
Now tell us about the retail space.
Yes, so the retail. So the retail pavilion is meant to be a retail pavilion, and pavilion might be the wrong word. Pavilion, and we shouldn't have used that word. I think it sort of means like an open space, like you can imagine a picnic table you find at a campground.
But you talked about it being a bike shop and things
Exactly,
like that.
and it is
the guy
much.
who thought that we had the best bike roads in all of the land.
David Kahn, and he still does, yes. So that really is meant to be a retail building, a standalone retail building. Mr. Minow is right. It could have, especially if it turns out to be a food use or a wine bar or something like that and not a bicycle shop, some nano walls where it could feel more open. But it's meant to be a retail space that we will lease to a retailer. It'll have a bathroom, again, so open to the public, but a dedicated retail space. The last thing I wanted to address real quick, we will come back with a little bit better of a trash plan for the retail spaces. Loading is, as Mr. Minow testified, we believe that'll be done and managed off hours early in the morning through the front doors. We think that's pretty common, but we'll come back with something on the trash in the retail space at the next hearing. Okay.
The chimney,
Chimney, finally, yes, thank you, Larry.
And
And the clock. Both of those, I think, were a reaction to some of the comments that we heard at Historic Preservation. And in fairness, there were a couple members, I think, of the board going through the zoning who also thought it looked a little church-like. And so when we got that comment again at Historic, we said, boy, we're getting this comment a lot. Let's see if we can make it recede. We personally would like to bring it back to where it was before. We loved it as an architectural element. We loved the clock as an architectural element. So we're open to both. I think we would leave it to the discretion of the board.
from my position, I would bring it back to similar to the drawing that's in the ordinance.
In the zoning, understood.
That's in the ordinance. The comment about it looking like a church, now with that depiction, it looks
More like a church?
a little bit like St. Bridget's, right?
It does look a little
It
bit.
looks more and more.
So,
I know.
bringing it back, it improves the look.
Some of the comments we had heard maybe at HPC was, look at the brick barn at Trump National as for some inspiration, maybe round it out a bit. I think they were just trying to figure out a way to massage it, but not eliminate it.
Not eliminated, got it. Thank you, Mr. Hickey. So, okay, so we'll bring back a revised drawing. It'll be pretty similar to the previous drawing that is part of the zoning ordinance.
And if you move the chimney, Noah, you probably could just, maybe mirror some of the aspects of the floor plan inside so that it works architecturally,
Perfect.
I think I've mentioned that. So, that's one thought,
Will do, absolutely.
No, you know, we talked about delivery trucks for Amazon and that kind of thing, but what happens when a retail store has a tractor trailer to pull up?
Yeah,
with
so
stuff?
these stores, we anticipate no tractor trailers. We're not planning here to have a 10,000 square foot CVS or a 50,000 square foot ShopRite or something like that. These are not stores that are going to be loaded with a 63-foot truck or 53-foot truck. These are stores that are going to be loaded with a box truck at most, you know, more likely Sprinter vans for the most part. So we don't anticipate any of that. And again, we can manage that. So we can put a requirement on retail tenants in the lease that they're not to be using those sort of trucks. And if on the off chance that somebody needed to use a large truck like that, we could manage it and have a dedicated space off to the side in the ring road. But we don't anticipate that at all.
No, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. I don't know if they're in your aspect or not, but the bike racks outside.
Yep, and Mr. Bauer, Tom Bauer will get to that.
Okay. And snow removal. I'm concerned about where you're going to put snow.
Okay, and we can have Ron testify to that. So we'll,
Okay.
yep.
And also, we talked that you plan to allow your residents to have dogs. I really recommend dog stations. I really recommend that. It really helps a lot. So just,
And Mr. Bauer will get into that as well, Carol.
okay,
Yes.
very good. Okay. Anybody else?
I hope that cleared it up. And again, I apologize because that's on me. I
Okay.
just was not very clear with the team.
Okay.
So, thanks.
All right.
Okay.
Next witness? Yes? Yes?
Yes. I'd like to call Tom Bauer of Willow Bauer and Carmen.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
Yes, I do.
And please state your name, and spell your last name, and give us your address.
Sure. My name is Thomas Bauer, B-A-U-E-R. My address is 82 Pierce Avenue, P-E-A-R-C-E, in Manasquan, New Jersey.
Thank you, Tom. The board, well, maybe you should do your qualifications, because probably most of the board haven't met you before.
Certainly, be glad to.
Mr. Bauer, can you report the benefit of your educational background and professional experience?
Yes, I can. I am founding principal of Melillo and Bauer Associates, now Melillo Bauer Carmen, established in 1979, 43 years ago, hard to believe. I'm a graduate of Penn State University with a degree in landscape architecture, class of 1976. I'm licensed in New Jersey and numerous other states as well, and I'm a fellow in the American Society of Landscape Architects. I've appeared before many boards across the state.
Okay.
I would like to qualify Mr. Bauer as the landscape architect.
The board will accept this qualification.
Yes? Okay.
Thank you, and good evening. Nice to finish up, now that all these guys have stolen all my thunder. I like hearing Tom will cover that. Tom.
There's some details.
They say Tom will cover it, and then they tell you what I'm going to cover, so. Anyway, I know that the landscape on the plaza have been a very, very important major focus of yours through the whole rezoning process, and I hope that you agree, as we do, that the plans we're going to present to you tonight address your vision and your intention during that rezoning process. I trust that they will. I'll start with the first exhibit. This is actually, what this represents is a compilation of the landscape plans that we submitted to you. They've been put together, they were match lines as submitted to you, and the plan has been rendered. In short, honestly, what we have is a gorgeous landscape. We've got a canvas upon which I think we are creating art in the landscape, quite honestly. We've got a fabulous mix of plant material. The palette of material consists of numerous varieties of deciduous trees. We've got oaks, maples, zelkova, plane tree, numerous others. We've got evergreen trees as well, ornamental trees. Some evergreens are spruce and arborvitae. We have birch. We have katsura, which is a tree many of you may know. And in addition to that, as Ron pointed out, we have thousands of shrubs, ornamental grasses, ground cover, and perennials. So in combination, we have a wonderful palette, as I said, a wonderful palette of plant material throughout. I think I would characterize this as an informal landscape. I think that is complementary to the colonial character of Bedminster. It's a multi-season landscape. We'll have color in the fall, we'll have flowers in the spring, we'll have a winter landscape of deciduous and evergreen trees. We're very excited about it.
And I think it's a terrific solution. With that, we can talk more about the landscape if you like. You may have questions about specific varieties. Perhaps I'd love to chat about that with you. But what I'd like to do really first, if you can go back one slide, Chris, is just a couple comments about circulation, both pedestrian circulation and vehicular. Pedestrian circulation is throughout. Obviously, we have a sidewalk along Burnt Mills Road. We have the access along the retail facade. And we have a loop road, loop walk that goes all the way along the tree line area of the stream corridor. And that's where we would be the obvious location for our dog stations, or dog waste stations along that walkway. I think that'd be a great, I'm a dog owner, as many of you may be. That'd be a wonderful spot to walk your dog. And a series of stations along there, I think, are very sensible, as opposed to them being elsewhere along either Burnt Mills Road or the loop road, right? That along the stream corridor is a sensible spot. Pedestrian circulation is public along the entire grade level. And then we have our rooftops have private circulation as well that access that public circulation pattern. So we have a very extensive pedestrian circulation pattern. We'll talk a little bit more about the material of that pavement, especially in the retail and Woonif area. Vehicular circulation, I just want to touch on that. And maybe, now don't go there yet, Chris, but in a moment. The Woonif really is that the roadway that's shown in this area up in brown. We'll talk about vehicular circulation on site, not off site, but on site. We have obviously two locations, two entrances to our site, one off of our loop road, the other off of the location along Burnt Mills Road, which is actually the existing location of the bank entrance today. So we're maintaining that same curb cut. And then obviously from that point, we have access to the Chase Bank from there. So Woonif, we've talked about the Woonif. So what is a Woonif? For those who don't know, it's actually a Woonif. It's a European term, originated in the Netherlands. And Larry was correct, he spelled it correct, W-O-O-N-E-R-F. By definition, a Woonif is a living street, a shared street, if you will, shared with vehicles, cars, people, pedestrians, and bicycles, basically, three modes of transportation. The geometry is such that it makes it uninviting for a car, if you will. The goal is to make it more pedestrian-oriented and less designed for the vehicle. I like to say that it's a space for people where the car is the invited guest, if you will. Thus the geometry. We do have along that roadway, we have perpendicular parking. I think, was it 65 spaces, Ron? It's some 60-some spaces along that area. There are no curbs. It's all flush. Control is vehicle protection for the pedestrian is provided via either bollards or a landscape or some low walls, as you'll see as we go forward. So it's a great space. The heart and soul of it, we're going to go to the next slide now. That center space is the events plaza. It's a wonderful space. It's close to a half of an acre, if I recall correctly. And as you can see, it starts just inside of Burnt Mills Road. The sidewalks of Burnt Mills Road approach that area, so it actually intercepts the sidewalk. And it goes from there all the way up to the lobby, is what we'll call that whole event space. And it goes from the end of the Brown Road to the Brown Road. What we'd like to do is, in the normal daily activity, cars can travel through this area, and we have a boulevard of 3 trees in the center of it. And again, it's a little bit circuitous, so a car has to slow down. Low speed and traffic calming is very important in this area. So in a normal day, as I was saying, the area between Burnt Mills Road and the driving area will be all pedestrian, entirely, as is the area between the lobby area and the drop-off zone that we talked about. In the case of an event, on a weekend perhaps, when we want to have a farmer's market or an arts and fair, craft show or something of that nature, we would close off traffic to the entire event space. So that Brown on both sides would be closed off with barricades or a series of planters or the nature, so that entire area becomes your market space, your event, whether it's a concert, market fair, art festival, as I said, of the nature. So it's a wonderful space. And as you'll see as we go forward, we've got decorative lighting for that in the evening, should it go into the evening hours, with decorative light fixtures, string lights and the like. Rich in paving and texture. I mentioned the art and the landscape. It's not only landscape, plant material, but also hardscape, the attention to detail in the paving patterns and pavement selections and colors and texture is very important. Not unlike the architect or interior designers will address the inside interior floor space. We'd like to do the same outside. So the entire drive aisle that's shown here in brown is going to be a cobble, I'll call it a cobbled textured kind of paving stone. The parking spaces will be the porous paving, as Ron mentioned. And then that entire plaza will be a different pavement, a concrete paver most likely, different colors. So really a very interesting ground plane, the floor of interest, if you will. We've got grade change we'll talk a little bit more about as we go forward. Let's go to the next slide. I'm going to show you a few renderings. Some of these are duplicative or redundant from what Dave has shown, but this is you saw this view in the daytime. We're now looking at it in the evening hours, and you can see that whole event space. Burnt Mills Road again in the foreground. Generally, the majority of lights along this Wooners Drive are the same light fixture that is in the office complex, the same fixture. So we have a consistency of street lights. However, in addition to that, we have suggested a more decorative, I'll call it a stage light. It's a taller fixture with individual spotlights that will focus on a ground plane, and you'll see some of those in this rendering. And I think that's going to create a tremendous visual and very desirable look to the event plaza. In addition to that, there are string lights.
A little bit, you're giving us a lot.
Am I giving you too much? Am I going too fast?
Yeah.
You can hit me.
Because there's
Slow me down.
questions that I'm sure I'll forget if I let you get to the end.
Yeah, you feel free to ask questions as I'm going. I'll be happy to answer.
So you mentioned about the landscaping itself.
Yes.
And how it has kind of a four-season kind of.
Sure.
It's a four-season solution where you'll have flowers in the spring
Sure.
and color in the fall and that kind
Yes.
of thing. So is it intended to be natural to the extent like a New York City Highline kind of thing, where it doesn't require a lot of manicure, a lot of plant rotation, a lot of...
It's very interesting you say that, because that is one of the biggest misconceptions. I've heard that numerous times, that the Highline doesn't require maintenance. If you knew the amount of maintenance that requires, you would fall over dead. They have a maintenance staff that you can't believe.
Really?
They maintain it tremendously to make it look unmaintained. Honestly. They have an enormous maintenance staff.
But you're not swapping out mums in the fall for tulips in the spring and doing that kind of thing?
Well, there may be some of that, but not an extensive amount, but certainly near the lobby, I think there would be some of that fall color, and we're going to do, I'm sure, Noah, pumpkins and chrysanthemums in the fall. We're feeling fall-like right now.
Right.
Spring may be more, impatiens and things like that, and to some extent, sure. But not throughout the entire project, no.
Okay.
I think we have ornamental grasses that will need to be maintained, other shrubs that will. What we don't want to do is create hedges and formal landscape. We want to keep it natural and let the plants grow as they
I'll
like.
segue to the second part of your
Yeah, sure.
presentation on the vehicular, the integration of the vehicular and pedestrian traffic.
Yes.
So, the intent is with the turns and the changes of the pavement and all of those kind of things, all that is intended to be calming for vehicular traffic and make sure that
Yes.
regardless of what speed limit you have posted, people feel uncomfortable going over 10 miles an hour on
That's
these
right.
roads, right?
That's the goal. That's
Is that the
correct.
intent?
That is the intent, yes. Slow the car down.
So the
Make it safe
the
for
cobblestone
pedestrians.
roads, the turns, the narrowness of even the right-of-way
Yes.
for cars is all intended to
Intentional.
control that.
That's the definition of the Wooner. That's what creates it. At the term that we used was a living street. It's about people. Most projects that we're well aware of, they have parking lots and straight roads and cars drive fast, and you need crosswalks to define where I can't
So
walk
when you
here
put up
because
your
it's
bollards or
dangerous.
whatever you do to
Yeah.
cordon off the event area during an event,
Yes,
cars would be able to enter from one point and exit that same direction?
that's correct. And
same-
in that case,
The same on either side?
that's right. So basically, we would have two dead-end lots at that point in time.
Okay.
Yes. So that would be, it's a very good question, that would be managed by ownership. That parking on that event day, parking and access to that area would be managed. Okay? Yes, sir.
Will you be able to get into that front parking area from the west, from the access road there? It looks like you really can. There's going to be a double, coming out. There's going to be two lanes going out. And then there's, looks like some type of a median there. It looks like you will be able to cut in.
The center area, can you go to the next slide, Chris, for a moment? The central area that you're talking about, this area?
Now go to the left. Keep on going. How are you getting in there? If you're coming in that,
You just make a right turn off of, your right or left turn in. I'm sorry, it's a one-way street, so it's just a right turn in.
So, no, it's both ways.
That's the ring.
Or the arrow,
There's
it
no
is two-way,
median.
right? It's two-way, I'm sorry. Yeah.
So how are you getting in there?
In here?
Yeah,
You drive in?
Turn it
but what if you're coming on Burnt Mills Road?
this way?
Yeah.
Like you're going into the Bank of
Turn in.
America now.
You're
Yeah.
gonna get in there? What's that,
There's 3
that
lanes.
island? There's 2 lanes and there's a little island there, isn't there?
This is a hash run.
Oh, it's like a bridge.
All that is stripe there.
This is striping.
That's
striping.
That's
That's
striping.
striping.
Which means you don't really go across it if you're coming from this way. So you think you'd be able to make a left and
You can make this left-hand turn, yes, absolutely.
Okay, that's
Yes.
the idea.
Yes.
All right.
And that's the existing road that's there now, right?
Right.
The road dimensions here, the driveway dimensions, are 24-foot drive aisle. So it's not, even though it serpentines, it's still meeting the full definition of your aisle width. So your parking space is a regular parking space, and the aisle is a regular aisle.
I think what's misleading about that is that the left turn lane looks like it's longer, and that you would have
Right.
to drive over it. I think that's what's misleading about that rendering.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Gary, we talk about
Yeah.
channelization and some of those issues.
But you can get in now.
But you can enter either of the 2 separate parking lots independently.
Yes.
Right, so there's 2-direction
That's
traffic
right.
in the parking lot, yeah.
Two access.
And there's enough space to do your little K-turn coming out of that spot there on the left.
The full width aisles.
Okay?
We'll have to address that with Gary V when he testifies next time, on-site circulation.
Okay. We proceed. Chris, if you would. Next one. Okay, so we have a view here, then another view. This is a little bit closer view, again, of what was the pavilion, now a retail shop, maybe bike shop, maybe wine bar, whatever. But this is the area immediately here where there are trees with benches, furniture. There was questions about the furniture. Very important, it needs to be movable, ideally movable furniture so that it can be taken out in case of a farmer's market or the like. But ample space, and again, it's open to the public. I see this as saying, right along Burnt Mills Road as announcing, welcome to the public, come on in and enjoy yourself. It's that much of an invitation to the public to utilize this space. Umbrellas for color, texture in the pavement again, and the lights in the evening for a dramatic landscape along
The
Burnt Mills
intention
Road.
that the lights are on all night?
There would be light on all night to some degree. I don't know if the string lights would stay on all night, or the theater lights, if I call them, stage lights would be on all night, but certainly there would be light on for safety.
So there's
Yes.
some lights that would be just 24, well,
Yes.
going to dusk
Yes,
for security purposes.
I think
And there might
that's
be other
correct.
lights that are only on while the retail operations
yes,
are.
that's what my suggestion would be, that, yes.
Okay.
Right. Next slide. Thank you. You may have seen this one also. This is, again, that central area. 3 trees in the center, again, to slow and calm traffic. The attention to plant material. Here you see some of the annuals in that median that may be changed out. Those real focal areas are areas that we would want to change out and make seasonal. Yes. Here, Dave showed you this slide earlier. This is where there is, I'll talk about it a little bit further, but what's interesting is that there's almost 8 feet of grade change across the site from the east side down as a high point. The Chase Bank is the high, and the Loop Road is the low. There's about 8 feet of grade change there, and the retail area is level. So that's why we have some steps and things like that. We have steps, we have ramps, everything is handicap accessible. As I mentioned, there are no curbs, so it's for easy access across the entire area. Here you see sitting steps to the right, you see walkable steps in the center, and as Dave mentioned, off to the left behind that sign is an accessible handicap ramp. So we've addressed all the grade change, and we've addressed the 8 feet of grade differential across the site in the overall design. So let me take you through this is to the west side of the entrance we just talked about. I just want to point out some of the highlights here. What's interesting is we have provided a landscape buffer between the parking area and the retail shops. So if we have a restaurant or something of that nature, we'll have some outdoor dining, there aren't cars parked right in front of you. The area of landscape there is actually a rain garden to take some of the stormwater, perhaps from the sidewalk area of the retail, perhaps some of the roof drainage as well. And there's a nice buffer. There's also, we have a detailed stone wall that meanders through there. In this case, you can see the sidewalk coming between the 2 parking stalls has steps and a handicap ramp as well, accessible ramp. Again, addressing the grade change. And I might point out that the bank as well, right in front of the bank, you can see a set of steps because the bank is actually at a lower level than the rest of the retail. So again, we're addressing the overall grade change through some techniques. I might point out in this case that there are 2 bike rack locations. I think we have a total of 5 areas of outdoor bike racks along the retail area. This area has 2 of them. There's one there, and there's one more to the left in that area. So I think we have...
Point that out again, the bike rack areas, Carol, are...
Yeah, I see that.
There's one there,
Yeah,
another
see
to
that.
the left. Yep. Okay. And then again, landscape. As the landscape along Burnt Mills Road, nicely buffered. We're buffering the parking, the headlights of the cars or front grills of cars are nicely buffered through some grade change as well as landscape and mass plantings. Next slide. So I'll show you a view of this area. This is, the bank is immediately to our right. This is the set of stairs that go up. This is where some of the grade change is addressed. And you can see the ramp floating to the left as well. Rain garden in between the ramp and the steps, and then parking to the left. So I think, again, I like grade change. Some people are like, oh my gosh, we have to deal with grades. I always think it adds to the ambiance of the outdoor space and is actually a benefit. Next slide. So we've gone over to the east side now of the Wooner. The Chase Bank entrance is all the way to the right. You can see the second entrance off of Burnt Mills Road. Again, similarly, we have a buffer of a rain garden and landscape area and a stone wall that buffers some of the parking from our retail outdoor dining and outdoor space. Another 2 more bike racks are located in this area as well. Actually 3. There's 1, 2, and 3. Good job, Chris. Thank you. So that's the total of 5 bike rack areas that we have. So I think more than ample outdoor and very convenient for the cyclists in town. And we talked before about the loading access coming off of the drive aisle adjacent to the bank driveway. And then I have a view of this area as well. This was the one that was a little confusing earlier. This is that corner. You can see if you look closely on the right side, there's the rain garden and the stone wall. Some nice site detailing. I think it's important. Pavement detailing, wall detailing, furnishings, streets, lights, shade trees, all of that comes together to complement the architecture of the building and to create a great looking landscape. As I said, we consider it art in the landscape.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the furnishings?
Furnishings, yeah.
Particularly, windproof, weatherproof.
Yeah, durable.
Who's maintaining that
Yes.
stuff? Who's taking the umbrellas down and things
That's right.
like that?
Good, very good point. A lot of that will be tenant driven, I believe. A lot of, if you rent to a restaurant A, they may have their own furniture preference. We've run into that, like Panera Bread maybe has a certain type of furniture that they like to use historically. Other people have others. Other than that, if they had no preference, we would perhaps make a recommendation to them through KRE. KRE would be maintaining much of it in addition to the tenants, I believe. But certainly durability, weatherproof, all of that's very important. It's got to be heavy, can't be blowing away in the wind. Outdoor furniture, there's so much of it available today, some beautiful furniture. We have many selections, so we have not done that. Perhaps we can, next time we come in, have a little bit more information on that. But yes, I mean, furniture is very important.
Is there a storage area for it? For like the pool area has all these lounge chairs?
Yeah. Typically, we store, and I have to check with Dave and see if we have that, but typically the storage for those types of activities are in the garage area down below. So I have to see if that works.
None of this stuff would necessarily be anchored per se?
Some of it could be anchored in the retail area, that's possible. I wouldn't recommend not anchoring it in the event plaza, just because of the flexibility goal that we have, to change it all out.
You know what I'm missing in the event plaza area is a pavilion. I think there should be an area where it's covered, but it's permanent. Covered but permanent. I'm not saying it doesn't have to be huge, but there should be some space that you're protected from the rain and not having to go into a restaurant or to pay somebody. There should be a public area where you can go and take your bike and go be protected and have your friend come from down the block. For me, I'm missing that.
I understand.
And I thought the pavilion was going to be that, but it's a retail store. So, I see umbrellas everywhere, but I would like to see a dedicated permanent space where you mentioned the art fair, you might have music. There should be, I think, a more cohesive, permanent type of structure.
I think that there is, that first, I was just gonna say that, Dave, the first, what's not shown here, and I don't have an image. I can
No,
bring the
that's
next
not, I'm
one.
not talking about in the lobby. I'm talking about out in, where the pavilion.
Yeah,
where
I
you-
think that pavilion, we may have that coverage, but the pavilion has an extension on it. It doesn't show well here.
Well,
It is-
that's why I asked the question before, and I would really like to see some details on that next time.
Okay.
But I think there should be a dedicated, permanent pavilion area.
Yeah, okay.
For me.
We can explore that.
Yeah, I
It's
see.
not that deep.
I
It
see
doesn't
that,
look like it's
but,
that deep, right?
you know, that's, for me, that's not enough.
Okay.
You can light it like in the rain anyway.
But the point is, there should, this is, you talk about the community, the gathering place,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
That's what's gonna create a community. Wow, we'll meet you over there.
Yeah.
Okay?
Oh, this is a great spot exactly for that, yeah.
But, we're not gonna huddle under a blue umbrella. That's my point. I don't like the blue umbrellas. I like a
You don't like
permanent
umbrellas, or you don't like blue?
Pavilion, where you can, where it's permanent.
Yeah,
okay?
I understand. Yeah, and I think part of that pavilion may have that, but we'll look closer at that and give you more information, sure.
Yeah, it looks like there's a section of the retail pavilion that has an open section. An overhang with a roof.
Something a little
Oh,
bigger.
Dave is just telling me that there's an overhang of almost 20 feet, about 18 feet.
looks like.
That may satisfy that request. We'll see.
And I would say this, I think, George, the ordinance envisions one.
Hold on, I can't hear two people at once.
The ordinance, this was kind of important to the ordinance, that you have the open space, the main building, that has a setback requirement. And then there was one pavilion allowed in the space up near, with no setback to the sidewalk of Fern Hills Road. So another structure would be a variance. And I'm not saying.
The whole thing is a variance, Tom. That's why we're working through the process.
Right now.
I'm talking about previously, Tom, to redesignate the zone, okay?
Yeah, but
The
that's
whole
not a
thing.
variance. That's just changing the zone.
About changing the zone.
And I'm not saying you couldn't grant it, I'm just saying the current ordinance, the way it's structured, is there's one structure like that retail pavilion, basically in the front yard, it's allowed by ordinance, and it's allowed to be up against the right-of-way of Burton Hills Road. So if you wanted to have another separate structure, I would say that would be a variance. I would recommend you not do that. You have it as part of this structure. If you're gonna have more roof, you have to have it here. Because you're trying to keep the space open. You're trying to be able to walk up to the main space.
Even if it was, even if it was a structure with like some sort of colonnade around it, where it was, the indoor space was inset, you had the 20 feet front and back and 10 feet on either side, so you had covered areas within that structure. I think there's a way to kind of detail that to address some of what George is talking
I think
about.
so. I'd like to see some more of that when you come back.
Okay, we'll explore that, yes.
Excuse me, Madam Chairman, I did have a couple of comments, questions that really is for the board based on the renderings that we've seen, because one of them showed lighting along the building washing up and down. That requires a design waiver because our ordinance does not permit building facade lighting. Whether you want it or not is irrelevant, but if it's going to be there, then they'll need a design waiver for that. The other thing is that spotlight theater lighting, that would also require a design waiver because it has to, it's not horizontal. It projects at an
So
angle.
this stuff is not allowed?
No. And so that other lighting would also require a design waiver. And again, the concern.
Is it not allowed because it's projecting up, or just because it's
Building
hitting the
facade,
ball?
building facade lighting is not permitted, except for houses of origin. But the other lights, those angular spotlights, are also not permitted by the ordinance. Again, you may want them and go ahead and approve them, but I just want
you recognize that you need to grant a design waiver for that. And my only concern would be potential glare from Burnt Mills Road.
Right, and
Because
there
it's
may be ways,
relatively close.
there may be ways to do with different light fixtures, the goal that you're trying to achieve, but the ordinance is basically an ordinance that is saying you shall not see the.
They have to be cut off.
Yeah, you shall not see the light itself.
And all the.
The light bulb itself.
All the string lights.
Yeah,
obviously.
that's a waiver.
That's a design waiver because you're not supposed to see the source and you will, but that's a minor thing.
We've known that you wanted some of those lights.
Those will just be there, it's just the
They
brighter
were
source.
there since day one.
It can be glare.
Yeah.
And they're actually depicted in the ordinance.
Okay.
In most of our commercial properties, is box lighting, everything's downlighted, so everything's down.
Yeah, and that's what-
Even if it's a gooseneck, I mean, it
Yeah.
can be, it can look like what you're proposing.
Mhm.
It just can't have a visible fixture from the side. I don't know if it can be as high as they're proposing. I don't know if there's a height on that. How high were those spots?
They would be 20-foot pole,
That's probably.
20-foot pole, and the lights would be set coming down lower than that, maybe 18, 16, 14, that kind of thing.
But the board can grant relief if it's needed, but maybe work with Paul to try to fit within the typical fixture design.
Mhm.
And Ron knows some of these details.
I have a question also. There's a lot of trees here on the property, especially towards the front. What does this property look like 10 years from now? And how tall do these trees get to be? And how big are these trees?
Well, I think 10 years from now, the site will be even more beautiful than it will be the day it's planted. It will only get better. And some of the trees are mature, not unlike some of the trees that we're going to be taking down on the site today. There's a couple of beautiful oak trees out there, a couple of maples, some gorgeous trees. They can mature into sizable trees, sure. And I think that's only going to add to the
It
aesthetic.
won't clutter the space or
Oh, no, I don't think it'll clutter. I think it'll be just fabulous.
create a
Yeah.
canopy
Yes,
effect?
correct.
Okay.
It's a great word, that's exactly right, yeah. Mhm. So what we have is, the goal again is with the palette of material, is a layered landscape. Higher canopy, mid canopy, and lower ground cover, along with the four-season color and interest.
Can you talk
Yeah.
a little bit more about the passive green roof?
Sure, that's
Got-
in fact, good segue. We're going to come up to that right now. I think that's our next slide.
We're going to mark your package, Tom, is going to be A4, I think. And I don't think you added any, but you did zooming in. Is that what
We just
happened?
zoomed, yeah, we didn't add any,
Okay, so-
no.
So, again, a digital copy to Janine and also a hard copy, hard printed copy as well.
Okay.
Through your attorney or Noah.
Okay.
Okay, so that's A4, and go ahead.
So we have the two rooftops. Again, parking below both of them, as we talked about. This is the more active of the two. Again, to the top of the sheet in the pink is the lobby. As we exit the lobby, we have an outdoor lounge. This is a year-round outdoor space. Okay, so you can use it even, a day like today, and evening, well, it got a little bit cool, but the last couple of days have been beautiful. This is a great outdoor space. We've got a lawn panel, got some trees in planters. Again, we can't put them in the ground because we're on a rooftop, but we put them in planters and they're raised. So it's a tree-lined area. We have a fire bowl out there. We have some barbecue grills for the residents, as Dave had mentioned previously. So that's a very nice outdoor space. There are some string lights. There's some outdoor furniture. Also, along the perimeter, for those residents who live at this level, they have an outdoor patio with direct access to the balance of the rooftop as well. We have circulation that comes down along the left. It's an egress circulation, point of egress for residents to go down those stairs and head out. So this is a private rooftop. It's not open to the public. It's for residents only. And then the last component of this is an enclosed pool area. And I say enclosed because it needs to be fenced within the rooftop by code. There's a 4-foot fence around it. It's seasonal, obviously, most likely Memorial Day to Labor Day. So that space will be closed. And that's the reason that we put it toward the outside of the rooftop, so that coming from the lobby, the first half of that entire rooftop is usable all year long. So it's a great looking roof. The amenities are nice to be used by the residents. It's also attractive to be viewed upon from the residents up above. The balconies up above, for the residents outdoors, through their windows looking down at it. It's a nice amenity. It looks like a park. And again, you would have no idea that it's a rooftop. We have dozens of these projects that we have built around the state, from, Bayonne, Hoboken, Jersey City, all the way up to Fort Lee. Very effective. And we do the pools. If we go to the next slide, Chris, I think this image, yep, you can see that the pool is about 18 inches or 24 inches above that rooftop level. These would be pedestal pavers most likely on the roof deck, so drainage goes straight through. The pool's elevated a little bit and sunken a little bit, as Dave mentioned. Plenty of headroom down below for cars to go underneath. It's done common. It's done all the time.
No liability protection too at the same time?
Liability protection gets all covered.
Right? How about the pergolas back there? Are they just louvered, or they have some kind of mechanical shading in there?
Well, they could have mechanical shade. We've done those as well. Right now, we don't have that detail. We just have a trellis, fixed trellis for a little bit of shade. Creates an outdoor space. It's a whole series of outdoor rooms. Not, again, similar to what happens on the inside. We're creating a series of outdoor rooms outside. And that overhead trellis helps to define that casual space. And as you can see, residents from the balcony looking down, it's just an attractive area. This will be a very popular rooftop in the summer months, very popular. Next one. This is another view from the lobby side, looking out at the terrace. You can see people populating, cooking burgers or whatever on any given weekend or summer day. You can see the umbrellas, furnishings again. Some of these may be fixed, they may be flexible. There will be chaise lounges at the pool area in the distance. And again, lush planting on the rooftop, so you don't even know it's a rooftop. You have no idea when you're out on these spaces.
You
Yes?
keep using the word rooftop.
Mhm.
Why did you use that word?
Because it's the roof of a parking garage.
Roof of the park,
It's
okay.
It's a roof deck, yes, rooftop, roof
Not
deck.
the roof of the building.
Yep, the other term is green roof. We use the green roof for the often term.
Green
I
roof.
should probably use that more
Thank
often.
you.
Yes, yes. Okay. And you can see again, the effect that you have trees growing on a rooftop like this is very impressive. And then the second and last rooftop, this is the more passive. Again, this is a private rooftop. It's not open to the public. It is enclosed. In this area, coming off of the pink area is where we have access from the common space. A walkway comes out and arrives to a little pavilion in the community garden area. These would be areas where you can garden, where the residents can take a plot, grow some tomatoes, some cucumbers, whatever they would like. We find it to be very popular in the apartment communities today. There's also some fire bowls in there, an area to come out, sit, read a book, some furnishings. It's nicely planted. We have some lawn area. Whether it's real turf or synthetic turf, we need to determine that. Some of our roofs, we go both ways with it. The real lawn is a little bit more maintenance, obviously. We also have residents, again, with patios on this area. That would be a terrific apartment to have that patio accessible to a garden like this. It'd be a very nice spot. And then again, to egress this area, we have walkway connection through a gate to get to the public walkway that runs along the tree-lined stream corridor with our dog stations located there. So, and all well lit as well for safety, and I think a terrific spot to utilize and view from above. And one more slide, I think this is similar to the slide that Dave showed you earlier. Again, Dave's focus was on the architecture. I'd just point out more like the community garden aspect of it, the resident patios, the balconies, the palette of plant material for seasonal interest throughout.
You sign up for your own little tomato garden there? Or
Sure,
how does that
yeah.
work?
I've got my plot picked out.
How does that, is that really how
No,
it
you
works?
do.
How would that work?
Yeah, that's what you do, yes. Typically, we number them, and you sign up for it. I've got plot number 4. Typically, the residents, we found that they are very respectful of people's garden plots. We also have some communities with a larger garden, where it's actually signed up to an outside agency to do the gardening for the residents, and then the residents actually purchase the vegetables from the gardens. So it's like the luxury way to do it. Yeah.
Tom, a quick question about the transition from private residential area to the public walk that comes around the back
In this case, go back one
building
slide, Chris.
inside.
On this rooftop? Yeah.
Yeah, so is there, what's the measure, with the security measures?
This is a gate. There's a gate, a fence that runs in this area.
Okay.
And there's a gate in this location.
Okay.
So access would be to here, this pavilion, or shade trellis with a dining table perhaps, There's a walkway, you can access this public walkway in this location.
And that's similar when you're at the rear of the roof deck by the pool, you have a
Correct.
gate over there.
That's right, yep. You see the stair at the bottom, that walkway comes down and accesses that stairwell. Again, as Dave mentioned, there's grade change. The parking entrance to the parking level is a full floor level below that level, that first floor level, thus the stairs.
So, Tom, I want to transition a little further now, back to the office building and
Sure.
the parking.
Yes.
So, as part of the application, are there additional landscaping measures associated with the parking phases?
On the office site?
On the office site.
I think that Ron's plans reflected landscape in that area. We did not.
Oh,
I did not
okay, so
provide
it's
those,
not, it wasn't.
But
through-
Ron's
okay.
firm did that, yes.
Okay.
But I did want to point out here that this, I don't know if I mentioned this, the connection from here, from this sidewalk to the office complex across the bridge is very important. We could provide the office workers direct connection to the retail restaurants and dining. Very nice amenity, yeah.
How would they get there?
There's loading on the right there.
That walkway.
You mean all the way around the right there, to the loading dock on the side?
They would walk right here.
Okay.
Right through here, and then onto the retail.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the loading area is outside.
Next to that parking lot in the back there, too.
Any other board members for Mr. Taylor? No? Okay, we'll open it up. Janine? See if anybody.
Oh,
raises their
I
hand.
do have a quick question. Do you have any
Yes.
elevations showing from Burnt Mills Road?
Overall
looks like the-
elevations of the building?
Yeah, yeah, I guess that would be
That would
probably
be
the closest, right?
Yes.
No, I'm just trying to get a sense of how the landscaping would look from the roadway itself as you're driving by. This is probably-
I think it would look park-like, if I can use that term, yeah. Be very attractive.
The sidewalk, though, is on the street like a regular sidewalk. And
Do
then
you
there's the landscaping, and
That's right.
then there's the,
You have an existing sidewalk there today that runs parallel to the curb of Burnt Mills Road.
Anybody, Janine, raising their hand? No?
It's, my only, I love it, is the lighting along Burnt Mills Road. Are we gonna be making that? Am I gonna be looking from the top of the hill in Millcrest down, just, bright light, like just bright lights down there? Is it gonna be on all the time, the street lighting? I see there's poles with down lighting and.
I think that the lighting will be very tasteful, and I think that maybe the event plaza lighting I was describing, maybe it's only used during events, and the rest of the light is very subtle. But the lighting in general is going to be an LED, a 3,000 Kelvin light, which is the softer. It's not that bright white light, which is the 5,000 K.
That's have street lights now anywhere. This would be the first place we'll have actually lighting right along the street.
Okay.
Well, I mean, when we had the meetings, nothing was settled as far as lighting, as far as I'm concerned. We talked about the string lights, they wanted approval, and I can remember saying, well, no, we're not just gonna give that to you. And then we said, well, we'll iron out the lighting at this process.
Okay,
So
further
there's,
discussion on that.
nothing is set in stone as far as the lighting. Your comments are extremely spot on. The lighting has to be looked at. Look at the history of every development in this town. Lighting is always an issue. So.
No, it's just, there's just, I don't think so, just remember the depiction itself shows the street.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
Let's just keep that.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Janine, we
Okay.
found our way on the public, right?
No, I did not, but let's just,
Okay.
Make sure. Open again.
Just be sure.
anyone in the public, it does not,
No one's raising their hand.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you
we'll
very
close it
much.
to the public.
Thank you.
Okay. So, where are we at? We finished for tonight, or?
Chair, I believe we have no more witnesses for tonight. At the next meeting, we will address any your comments, and we'll call Gary Dean, who's our traffic.
Okay. I would like to ask Ron, I don't know if you're bringing Ron back again, I'd just like to ask him about the snow removal, if you have a place that you plan to take care of that.
We'll talk about it and think about those areas and those pockets where
It's important, I know that.
And we definitely need Ron back.
So I'll be back.
Yeah,
We'll talk about light.
I
There'll be
figured
other
it would
things.
be, yeah, right, okay.
The other witnesses, I don't think you need them, but I'll defer to them,
Yeah, it's certainly up to the applicant, yeah. So if you have any questions now, speak up for now.
Well, the architect's coming back with materials and things like
Yes,
that.
yes,
anyway.
he's coming back, yes.
Probably not the
And Ron-
landscape architect, probably not the,
Are we determining
Noah
a January
is a
date
witness.
now?
We should, I guess.
It's the 6th or the 13th, because we're
We
ready.
have rest to the
Well, the
December.
6th we have for reorg, right?
December 2nd is Alfieri.
Yeah.
Well, they could cancel. Yes,
Good
you're
chance.
100%. And December 9th is the Somerset Hill Shopping Center and hopefully the plan endorsement. So for us, January 6th, yes, is the reorg.
Right.
I mean, that doesn't take that long.
No, it doesn't. We could-
Thing. Or January 13th. Those are our next.
Does the applicant have any choice there? As to a date you want to just verify? We hate to set aside time and then, you can't make it, so.
I mean, you can get back to us. Nobody else is going to get scheduled between now
Right.
and.
Well,
and-
you have to
Right.
announce it tonight.
I have to announce it tonight.
to carry the notice.
Yeah, right.
How about Gary Dean? He's the key witness who wasn't available.
Are we certain that the 2 December dates are full?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Well,
Very certain.
And there's
Sub-
another aspect.
subject to change.
Well, I don't think December's all right.
Does Gary Dean have availability, do you know, on both, on the 6th?
He will.
Okay.
He
Whoa.
Solves that problem.
New traffic engineer.
Or Elizabeth Doyle will be here.
All right, so we'll schedule it for the 6th of January?
Yes, our preference is January 6th.
Okay.
Carry to that date without further.
Well,
Yeah.
and the mayor's saying, do we just schedule for December 2nd, roll the dice and see if,
Well, we certainly could
Those are
do
the guys.
that if the applicant's willing to do that. You may not get heard though, it just.
yeah, it's an
That's a
application that I think
chance.
bigger than yours.
But I think we'll find out if that other one is gonna go. In the meantime.
You can carry us
And then
to
at
December,
least it's carried.
to December 2nd, and if we can't go December 2nd, you can carry us at that time to January 6th.
Yeah, we have one applicant that has postponed a couple of times, so we're not sure whether they'll actually follow through. you know.
When are we gonna know about
So
the
that's
second
up to
and the
you,
first?
if you want to take that chance.
They have to notice, so they would have to notice by the 20th or the 19th, to do it, they'd have to do it by
They've
the
never noticed,
6th.
right?
Who would have to notice?
Oh, they did once?
I don't think it was carried. Alfieri wasn't carried, was it?
It was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
2 December 2nd?
yes.
Well,
So
look,
that's your choice, that's your choice.
Either way, I think we prefer to be carried to
December,
2nd,
and take your chance.
Yeah, and
Okay.
if the other applicant cancels, we'll go. If not, we'll ask you to carry us on December
6th,
meeting.
January 6th. Okay, that's good with us? Yes, okay.
Okay, so the KRE SK application will be carried without additional notices to December 2nd at 7 PM. Here.
Good, and make sure Gary's there.
I was calling him right now. Thanks,
All right,
everybody.
good night.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
No, Tom, I will double check to see about the area, because you're right, we canceled the meeting.
Yeah, we canceled the meeting, and they have to renotice. You can't carry it without a meeting, so.
Okay.
Yes.
I think they have to
Yeah, oh, yeah.
renotice, but check the records. Either way,
We're still in meeting.
I'm sure you're probably right, so then it has to be the 10 days before, correct?
10 days before, right, in the paper and in the mailing, and they have a big mailing, and they have an objector too.
Excuse me, we're still in meeting, if you don't mind.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay, we'll just finish out what we have here. Do we have any board comments? Anybody have anything on their mind?
I was just gonna say that Colin and I and Renee from the Township Committee and Dawn March and Wendy Hickey from Historic, there was a ribbon cutting over at Quantum Wellness, Quantum Floats, and the facility looks great. That's all I'm gonna say.
I think I'm the only one that was on the board when we got that approved.
It was,
But they must have changed their name, huh?
yeah, so now they're a full wellness center rather than just a float center.
Yeah.
The building looks great. They incorporated some of the original beams from the old barn.
Yeah,
And
I'm for
they're
that too.
it looks great.
You were never on
It's
the
great to see a lot of people there. And so
Healthcare or fitness?
it is a wellness center.
All right, so what is that?
Yeah, what does that mean?
Does that mean they're
Well,
providing
it started out
massages
as
and?
a-
Obviously, you don't know.
That's why I'm asking. I'm not getting an answer.
Well, originally it was called Quantum Float, and it was this float.
You float in a tank of
You
water.
float in a.
Deprivation
Salt
tanks.
water.
Salt water.
Deprivation tank.
My neighbor lives.
Triangles and prisms and all that good stuff. Okay.
And so now.
So now it's yoga, cryotherapy, sauna, heat therapy, other stuff.
Right.
But the building looks great. It looks really
So they've
nice, and I think it's a
spent a lot of
nice
money
fit.
on there.
It's a nice fit for the park.
This was the building, this was the antique.
That's it. So,
Yeah.
my board comment.
Okay, okay, so we have, Lamington Farm has been resubmitted now.
Today.
Today? Today, okay, so we'll get that back on somewhere. And we have Alfieri, which is scheduled for the 2nd, December 2nd, so we'll hope that that has decided to go forward.
And there was another application that was submitted yesterday that I haven't started to look at yet, but I don't think it's a very complicated application, but I'll have to see where it sits relative to when that gets heard.
Okay.
What is it?
It is for the old cabinet shop next to the
Oh, really?
public school park.
Interesting. Wow.
And then we have Somerset Hills Shopping Center, December 9th, and then we go into January, a new year.
And the 9th of December, I will not be in state, so I may be able to join on Zoom or not at all for that meeting.
Oh, one other board comment.
Yes.
We're doing J&J vaccinations and Moderna vaccinations at the farmer's market this Saturday.
Including the booster, Larry? Okay.
Yes. My wife told me to mix and match, is that the case?
You can.
And, yeah.
If you qualify for it.
You can mix and match.
Yeah, you
Oh, you can? Okay.
Okay,
New-
so we
new
need,
data.
She got a
a
pregnancy
motion
next
to
Saturday.
adjourn.
Motion to
Anybody?
adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
And anybody second?
I think you got thirds and fourths on that.
I wish, I don't think it's that. That's the next one. That's booster number. Stop number 4.
Thanks for taking that.